I don't even know yet what this episode will be about. I just know it's gonna be good. Because eventually I'm gonna get in gear and then something interesting is gonna happen, as per usual. I mean, sometimes I listen to my old podcast episodes and I think, dude, that was actually pretty good. And then I realize again that the audience of this channel in general is not the audience for which these podcasts are made, and that's the main reason that they're not taking off. Or maybe there's another one, but okay, whatever. See, when I think, hey, more people should watch that, I'm not thinking about fame or the channel growth. Maybe you have noticed that I never ask for subscriptions and likes and so forth, because not only is that stupid and annoying, and people should know by now how the fuck YouTube works, but also I don't care, you know? I mean, of course I try not to crap into the faces of my audience. Obviously I don't. That's so when I occasionally say something about Trump or Musk and you get a whiff of where I'm leaning there, and I do lean, then you might think, oh my god, one of those fucking idiots. And well, that's your prerogative to think, and it's my goal to avoid that somewhat, because I know that's off-putting. Though it shouldn't be, else I wouldn't have that opinion. Obviously, I mean, if I think that people are put off by that, I'm obviously thinking that people are wrong. But okay, let's change topic, because that's not where I wanted to go. But I'm saying that the growth of this channel is not my goal. I like that it grows, I like that people like stuff, I like that people watch stuff, and when, oh my god, this video is 2 weeks old and has already 10,000 views, you know, this announcement that Unity was fucking Rocketworks, that took off as fuck. So yeah. That's cool, I like that, of course, obviously, but it's not the goal. My goal is to do whatever I like to do in balance with this overall scenario, not to shit into the face of the audience. I've been talking about AI a lot, and I think that topic can basically not be overdone. I will not do this now, I will just mention for a second. I get the whiff that people are often annoyed by AI. There's too much AI going on, AI is a product of the devil, it's bad, nothing good will ever come of it, it's a fad. It's not, man, it's not. Absolutely isn't. That's like people saying the computer mouse is a stupid idea just because the first models were clumsy. We have an incredible future ahead of us, where machines will be doing things that humans could do, so we will have legitimate slavery. And slavery, apart from the horrible thing that it definitely is, from a purely economic standpoint, is glorious. And so, of course, we should never have that. But if you could have that with machines, where it's not a problem, see, that's gonna be a fucking game changer. You know? Yeah, anyway. So, what topics could we talk about? One thing I am currently pretty interested in is gaming and well, the bad implementations that I keep seeing. And also I was thinking about about the Deus Ex remake project, which is still a thing. So it's not like that, well, it's over. No, I just wasn't in the mood to do something on that front for a while. And so I didn't. Actually, today I did a few things. I took a look at some realistic graphics and such, but those are not the focus for this Deus Ex remake that will be coming in a few decades, which will have the highest production value you can think of. It's real. That's a real thing. And it will be, on the one hand, it will be a passion project because I love Deus Ex, the original, and most people who have played it do, and sometimes they might not even be able to tell why, but I'm not saying people are stupid in this case. I'm saying it has its magic, and And that is one of the reasons that I am personally also so passionate about it. What could be one of the reasons? Well, personally, I think there's some kind of I will have to go straight to theism. I have an interesting theistic model of the world. I will not talk about it again this time, but I'm saying this informs quite a few of my interpretations of how things work in the world. For example, I think that stage fright is not purely a psychological phenomenon, but is rather also the human experiencing the actual cause and effect situation that they're in a physical way, that they're feeling basically the crossroads of all the judges in the audience, or at least agents. They're not necessarily judges, but they're agents. If they clap or if they don't, the club owner will decide whether you will have another stand-up gig there or not, and so forth. It's a very deciding situation and possibly fatal. I mean, as it not deadly, fatal doesn't mean deadly, just like apocalypse doesn't mean end of the world. Apocalypse means revelation, is Greek, and fatal just means it is affecting your fate. That's what that means. It doesn't mean deadly. Maybe the interpretation is deadly. Maybe these days when you look in the dictionary it will say that it's deadly. Well, that's bullshit. That would just be a perversion of the word. Like, this happens over time, and eventually the words then lose their original meaning. Like the word racism itself is kind of losing its original meaning of having racial aspects. No, not to say that race is a real thing. I just don't want to speak on to that. But that some racial aspects like skin color and such would actually be not just randomly, but actually deciding factors as to a person's abilities, performance and such, and particularly negative such positions, you know. That is the classic definition of racism, and that's the one I think we should return to, instead of going completely perverted and say that being against Islam is racism. That's just ridiculous, man. Anyway. So, that Deus Ex remake thing. So why is Deus Ex and also System Shock 2, in my opinion, 1 also, yeah, but I found 2 actually more magical. I mean both of them, but 2 was more easily approachable. I played both of them back then when they came out. In 1998 or so? 1999? Something? I don't know exactly. Around that time. Why do I think they were so magical? Because for multiple reasons, and I'm not going to go into all of them because they are too complex. They presuppose too much of the knowledge, in quotation marks, that I have of the theistic reality that we actually live in. So I'm not going to go deeply into that. But one of the reasons, I believe, is that something new was introduced into the world, and a novelty, you know, an actual novelty that was given to the mind of mankind that hadn't existed before, and so that entire mind was enriched by that. I mean, of course, not even every last human being. That's not what entire mind means. I mean that if we consider mankind's mind to be really just one thing instead of many entities, of course we're many entities, but we're interlocking like gears to some degree, right? In this regard, something new can be introduced. Someone comes up with electricity, and on that very day the mind changes, and this then leads to a revolution of the mind. And then eventually we will have electric devices all over the place. And energy production will be a major factor in human interest and thinking. And energy waste and all of that stuff that didn't exist until then. And in this way, System Shock and Deus Ex 1 introduced something we didn't have back then. In System Shock 2, or 1 also, but I prefer 2 when I talk about these things, it was the fact that we had a virtual reality, this aspect that you're really not just in a 3D space where you're moving back and forth and shooting things with point and click, but that this was immersive in that it was more complex than that more aspects of yourself were simulated. You could duck, you could lean, you had devices that you could use. You could upgrade yourself with devices, and so forth. And Deus Ex had that too. And so my version of Deus Ex will, while of course will also aim to have awesome graphics, you know, when you run Cyberpunk 2077 with hyper-realism models where you look at the sky and it's almost white, bright, with a hint of grey, blue, stuff like that. And this light then bleeds everywhere. That alone already giving you a kick, saying, wow, feels so open, and I just want to be there, you know. But that's not the focus. That's of course something that I want in there, but the focus will be on an immersive simulation. And the focus will also be on having things in there that will be complicated or complex. Like, I mean, for example, in Cyberpunk we have currently you're driving, you're pressing the key Y for a long time, which opens the spray paint thing if your car has that feature, and then you can change the color, and then, you know, or you have to, if you say I want to drive a different car, then you press the key V for a while, and then you have that menu where you can select the cars, and then you have to press F or whatever to confirm, and so forth. Every time the key has a different meaning, and of course you can get used to that, but it still sucks somehow. And I'm saying, why not just use a mouse? Now you might say, well, it's incompatible with console gaming. I can tell you right away, this Deus Ex, the project name is now uppercase D, uppercase X, 1 and lowercase r, DX1R, DX1 remake. That's just going to be the name of the thing, and probably even the name of the product. But that's, I mean, decades down the road, we don't know exactly how this will change. But this is a real project, I'm not kidding you, and that the resources necessary to make that happen will be there. You can take that to the bank. And the freedom to do so also. So it's not going to be like, oh, there's copyright, you cannot do this, you cannot do that. I will be able to do that. That is all already established, so don't worry about that. Where was I? Interface. Complicated. Yeah, I can already tell you it will not be released on consoles. It will be a PC exclusive title, and it will be also English exclusive. It will not be translated. That is something that will definitely be the case. For multiple reasons. One of them, all of the dependencies that come with it, for example, patches, updates, fixes, little extensions, a little bit more dynamic in the text generation, like place a variable here and whatever. That will fall away, those complexities, and so all the overhead. The unnecessary costs for that will fall away, though money will not be a factor. Also, I know for a fact that English will become the world language. Doesn't mean that all the other languages will fall away, but everybody will be able to understand, speak, read and write the English language. Now you might say, this is unnecessary, we have these translators today, but I don't accept that. This is not what it will be. See, something. Okay, let's use an example. People are leaning into cloud services a lot. For example, when it comes to managing their passwords. There's something about Microsoft's password system that is changing now, and so everybody has to delete or remake their password. Or I don't know exactly what that is, because this will not touch me, because I'm doing things as independently as I can. I'm having my own backups. I will have my password manager on my PC, of course, and not in the cloud. And I think that reality will prove again and again that no matter how good our systems are, our technology, sometimes we will have to live without them. And so ultimately, I think the only way to reasonably have a global society and an interplanetary society, which we will have, is to have one means of communication, language-wise, that does not require you to have like an AI translator or something. Which, by the way, currently still needs the cloud. In the future, probably not, because more and more chips are being developed that are specialized on running AI locally. And so that's something that's going to come soon, that we will have AI on our machines cloudlessly and still very powerful. But so I'm saying that English will become the world language. I mean, I have looked at all the factors, and to me, that is definitely a fact. That is the sum total of all the things if I stick them together. You might say, well, you're sticking them together wrongly, but that's what the puzzle tells me. And I've had that view for like 10 years at least, so it hasn't changed. That's a long time. That's very consistent. Now you might say, well, that's not what's actually happening in the world. Whatever the world is currently doing may just be wrong. What the future will be doing will be based upon the global average of past, present and future. So that will be more right. Just like history, you know? All of history combined resulted in today. Is today better than history? In many regards, yeah. So that's what I mean. And in this regard, in this way, if we add it all together, we're gonna have that. So back to business. Console, yeah, user interface. So I think maybe I would just reserve the right mouse button so that you get a mouse pointer in every situation. And then maybe the entire game slows down to like 1% of its normal speed, so that you still have the time pressure realism in it, but at the same time you would definitely have enough time to do stuff. But it's not like it's completely paused. But I don't know, this could be exactly one of the things that you can figure yourself, like the slow speed, and maybe there would also be different slow speeds. Like currently there's an action scene, so the slow speed would be higher. Or maybe you would first have to level up a little so that the speed in those situations would be lower, as in your processing speed has increased, and so you can certainly process information faster. And how do you simulate that realistically? By, well, slowing down the game so that you, with your human non-augmented player processor, can actually experience to have that processing capacity by processing faster than the reality around you. I mean, right? So there should be a complex interface, and there should also be a very complex simulation. For example, I'm thinking about actually having a node graph based programming or configuration system where you can adjust your own machinery, your own augmentation system. Where you could say, if this happens, then that should happen. This parameter should be increased in that situation. This means overheating, or this should stop early. So the cooldown is shorter, and so forth. All of that completely freely adjustable in a complex fashion. That's not necessarily what's going to happen, but I like the idea to go in that direction. There should also be complex simulation, and there will definitely be eating and pissing and shitting in that game, because it's one of the essential aspects of our human of human life. I'm not saying that you will actually running around with a brown ass or something, not that detailed in this regard, because there's also such a thing as taste. But I mean, the fact that every once in a while you have to take a dump, that just belongs in there. And there are lots of toilets in the game. You can never use any of those. But why? That shouldn't be the case. But now, when I say that there should be eating and sleeping and all of that should all be in that game, then you might think, okay, that's going to be annoying, that's going to get annoying quick. But what if the game takes place in real time? What if you can run around for like 4, 5, 6 hours before you should consider, well, maybe I should eat something again, or take a dump or whatever. And realistically, that would even be even longer than that. There should be something like realistic hacking in there. The hacking in Cyberpunk is obviously very gamified, and you might think, well, you're hacking so often in Cyberpunk that if you would have to like program something, analyze some hex files or whatever, use Wireshark to analyze network traffic and so forth, that would just be too slow to do. But that's the thing, in Cyberpunk, which is an awesome game, I'm not fucking ripping it a new asshole, absolutely not. I'm still playing it right now, not in this moment, but yesterday, for example, every day basically. And like when I said, well, the graphics of this new Deus Ex will definitely be better, for example, than Cyberpunk and so forth. When I was playing that in the recent days, I had to realize, god damn it, that's a tall order, man, that you put there. But it's, a few decades down the line, that's not going to be a problem. Easily. So, yeah. But the production value of that game is so high, there's so many details, unbelievable. Anyway, where was I? Yeah, when people say that gets annoying quick, in Cyberpunk, for example, you get kind of spammed with all these opportunities. There's yet another wall outlet that you could hack for some more parts that you get and so forth. The game is designed around that kind of flow, or around those kind of interactions that you can choose to do or not to do, but that's kind of the rhythm and flow. If you want your upgrade parts, one of the things you want to do definitely is to hack these wall outlets. But that would get spammy quickly. Also, why should you get physical parts to build something from... I mean, if I upgrade my weapon in Stationeers, in Cyberpunk, why is that based upon logical downloaded parts? Those are physical parts, right? Why can you get those by hacking? That's weird. Anyway, really great game. But the game that I'm thinking about would be different in that its balancing and rhythm and flow would be around realism and complexity, and about this virtual reality immersion thing. Like you're really there. This is really the world. And if that makes it necessary that the graphics will be simplified, then that will be the case. The graphics are not the priority. The graphics are something that should be great and so forth, but if it's not, then that's the way it is. The focus shall be here on the depth of the simulation, of the complexity of the interactions. Also, since it's going to be a few decades down the line before that happens, we will certainly have developed AI far enough that we can also use it meaningfully in a game, like for example as a dungeon master mechanic, which will then still... Okay, let's look at it like this. People would disagree with this, they would think, hey, AI output is never as good. But, I mean, these days we have human-designed things that are infused with random generation. I mean, there's just a number that is pseudo-random, but that's beside the point. It cannot be predicted, and it looks like white noise, so it's random enough for gaming. And you might say, well, a random generator cannot come up with a good situation in a game. But you would not say that, right? Because these days we know that's not the truth. The concept is like an evolution. You need to have a good system. In evolution, that's natural selection, and there's also the genetics that make the overall mutation happen in a stable environment. Not every mutation that would basically be dangerous to you is dangerous, actually, because the overall system is protecting itself against that. And in the same way, randomness in a game can be infused. Well, let's think about procedural generation. For example, Dwarf Fortress has procedural generation of the world, of dungeons, of its history, and that's very complex. But ultimately, it's just white noise infused into a system. Now, if we look at AI as something that does not always output meaningful and good stuff, we could look at AI as something that is kind of like a random generator with a flavor. The flavor that we want, but not the numbers that it outputs, in quotation marks the numbers, are not always good numbers. And so, maybe we don't want to use it as the dungeon master. Maybe we don't want to have the characters in this AI, in this new Deus Ex game be driven by AI, actually, that they can interact with them freely by typing and have more complex backstory, and your interactions are not just limited to some kind of decision tree of your flow through the game and the menu that you have in front of you, from which you then have to select, and then the outcome will be different from the summary that you interpreted, and that's frustrating and so forth. But instead you can just say, okay, my tone is friendly, I have this and this stance, and these are the words I speak, and then you say, okay, execute, basically. That's the kind of thing I'm thinking about there, which you might think, that's not Deus Ex, then it isn't, I don't care. That there will be enough Deus Ex in that. See, this Deus Ex thing, because of its magic, I want to go there. And since, I mean, we have, I think we have better stories today than the story that Deus Ex was telling. So I would probably also tamper with that somewhat, so that is also not too predictable for those who have played the game and who hasn't. Who in their right mind hasn't played the fucking game? But it will also be basically an experimental playground for future game mechanics. That's also what it's going to be. Like Stationeers is a prototype. It's a great game, but it's also a prototype for what? For games in the future having, like this Deus Ex will have, atmospherics. I don't know how deep those will be, but there will definitely be the concept of air pressure, of poison gas, of vacuum, of course, and of the vents will actually be things that not just reaching from room A to room B so that you can go there, which is particularly jarring in Deus Ex Mankind Divided, where the vents are very obviously when you're in a base somewhere, right? Very obviously for you to get there and to have some strategic option there, so that you can have the vent crawling experience, but there will be functional vents with where you then might have to tamper, where you might have to engineer a bit, possibly even disabling that thing so that you can get through, which might ultimately be noticed by the NPCs in a way that is dynamic. Now you might say this is untestable. Well, then I guess the game would have to be developed from the start with the following concept in mind. These days, robots are being trained by having virtual environments. That is something that NVIDIA, I think, has come up with. I don't know, but there's certainly a very strong drive on that front, that real training of robots will be used to derive similar training scenarios, similar training situations with different actions of the trainer, the human who trains them, and different environments with different lighting and so forth. All of that comes invented automatically, rendered realistically, the robot AI then being put in there with its virtual cameras and then being trained. That is something we are doing these days already. And so that game would then have to be developed from the start with the idea in mind that the game can be tested by AI. That you can let AI run through it and tell you what's wrong with it, where the balancing is off, where there are some things happening that shouldn't, and so forth. Well, and there will certainly be, currently we have computation centers with millions of, with thousands or even millions of GPUs to come up with new AI models, and that is the scope on which the development of that project will take place. It will be will be an extremely good remake of Deus Ex 1 with all the bells and whistles, but not as a game in the classic sense, but more like a simulation, which Deus Ex already is. But it is not realistic enough. And I want it to be very realistic while still being fun, but the focus should be on the realism. You might say, if it's too realistic, then it's no longer fun, but I mean, Stationeers is very realistic, and many people have a problem with that, and that is basically what you have to how you have to think about of this Deus Ex thing. It will not be made for the masses. It will be made so that it exists. I know this sounds a bit ridiculous, all the parameters I'm throwing at it, scope, and money will not be an object, and there will not be a copyright problem, and maybe not many people will buy it, but that's what it is then, who cares? I mean, what the fuck, but all of that is true. I will not go into why that is so, because the things I'm saying right now already sound insane. When I'm telling you why all those things are true, I will lose you completely if I haven't yet. So I'm not gonna go there. I'm trying to stay productive with my speech, which refers back to what I said at the beginning of the video, right? I want to do what I want to do, but I will steer still in a way that it is submitting to the current local and global situation, so that certain things will not be said and done by me, because it's just not yet the time, even though I'm eager to say and do those things. Mankind, the ultimate pleasure delayer. As it will be revealed. Anyway, so we will actually train new AI, develop new AI models specifically for that game, which will of course be an endeavor that will be incredibly expensive and completely overblown when you consider what it's good for, but it will at the same time be research. It will be the kind of research that will otherwise not happen in the world, because that kind of entertainment science is not being done because it's just too expensive. So in this way, this game will then, like Stationeers currently does, lay the groundworks for future gaming, because it will experiment. It will it will experiment on all fronts, but still will of course try to be a good game. Where will the focus be? On a good game experience, that's where the focus will be, but not by today's standards. Yep, I think that's a good way to put it. So yeah, there will be atmospherics in there. I was thinking about, for example, large cubicle clusters around the city, then on the ground there will be small clusters or at the walls, so that you could have something like wind actually meaningfully blowing through there and carrying I don't know, the smoke and smell of a fire. I don't know how exactly to express that yet on the screen. I mean, a few decades down the line, it might be that we are no longer using, primarily as we're doing these days, 2D screens and keyboard and mouse. But I'm not aiming for a virtual reality game here, because I will assume that I will just assume the current equipment for now, current PC equipment. At least it will be PC exclusive, so we're gonna have that at least, which means higher quality. Okay, let's zoom out a bit from the particular Deus Ex thing for a moment, or for longer. I don't know where this will lead. You know, this whole thing is spontaneous. Apart from the things I'm saying, you know? It's not like, you made that up on the spot, it's not true. Well, if it's not made up on the spot, which some of this is and some of it isn't, it doesn't make it true or not true. That's two different topics. Like saying, if you're a theist, then you're also religious. That's bullshit, man. You have to separate things and look at them individually. So, Okay, some things that I would like to see in games / things that piss me off in games. Let's talk about those. Something I would like to see in games, when it comes to the save and load mechanism, is that I can actually see the real situation that I will be in once I've loaded the save game. And there's a very simple technique to make that happen. A very, very simple technique to make that happen. When you have played a 3D first-person or third-person game, you have seen there's something like a backdrop, the so-called skybox, which has stars or clouds or whatever. This is maybe not... Okay, I don't know, I'm not 100% informed, but I think it's still being done as a box. So there's basically 6 images, 6 screenshots or whatever you want to call it, and they are being rendered in a way that it feels like you're in this environment without it somehow looking like you're in a large box or something. That can be done easily on the fly by just taking screenshots of your immediate situation in the game, and then that will be saved with your save game. And so when you select the save game from the menu, then you can immediately see yourself in that 3D environment. You just can't walk around, but you can look around. You can look in every direction. Why is that not a thing? Why is that not something that we have? I want that in that game, as an example. Then, while we're talking about saving and loading, there's such a thing as save scumming. And I certainly want you to be able to save and load the game, in principle, whenever you want. But that is an immersion killer, and I am an immersion buff. That is also, that's something I really like. Immersion is not everything. Well, then you don't play the game, because to me it is basically everything. I mean, this is not a bejeweled game. This is about an experience. So this is not like someone reading a joke to you, to stay with that kind of contrasty metaphor of Bejeweled as a game versus Deus Ex or other such games as a game. When I say, when someone reads a joke to you or tells you a joke, that is ultimately a literary experience that is emotionally stimulating. But it's not immersive. If it is a fictional story, then it is in principle immersive. And what some writers, Hollywood and such, Disney in recent years very much get wrong is that suspension of disbelief is key. So things ideally must not be foreseeable, there shouldn't be cliches if possible, and there shouldn't be forced writing. If a situation takes place, it should take place naturally as a result of the simulation of the situation. That's also how I do my own writing. I say, basically, normally, often I have some kind of idea where I want to go, but sometimes I just start writing. I just start with a sentence like, maybe some dialogue. I say, but that's not what they would say, like quotation marks, but that's not what they would say, exclamation point, quotation marks. And that's all I have. And then I just continue from there, even though that's nothing. And then something will unfold, and then from that I will be stimulated to have some idea in some direction, and since nothing's nailed down yet, I will go in that direction then, and so forth. And then I just run the simulation. And I'm not saying that's the way to go about it, but I'm saying that's a demonstration that the philosophy of simulate the now, that's all you need to do, is the way to go when it comes to immersion, when it comes to suspension of disbelief. Now, it also needs to be interesting, it also needs to be fun, but that whole thing can be steered, obviously. For example, you know what? I'm just gonna do something wicked, which I am known for, and I will just read a story to you that I wrote. Not the entire story, particularly because it's not yet done. But I will read it to you. It is called, I only have the first chapter so far. It is called The Obsidian Artifact. The chapter is called Onset. I will do that to you because I feel like it. Maybe you enjoy it. I hope you do. I think it's pretty enjoyable. And that's a story that I actually wrote. By the way, this story, like some of the stories that I came up with, and some of them are pretty good, really, I must say. I know this sounds wanky, sorry, but I read them again and again over the years, and every time I feel something new, something pleasant, something fun, and I correct something here and there, but I think, God damn it, this is good stuff, this feels good, it's rich, and it's original and interesting, and so forth. Not that this one necessarily is, but many of those emerged as part of a larger story where I was simulating for immersion that the main protagonist was experiencing everything in real time from the first person perspective, and sometimes there would have to be some time that passes. And for that time to pass, what can happen in the meantime? Well, the character might actually be asleep. And during that we have a dream, which might be fitting the story. But sometimes there would be, the character might be actually listening to an audiobook while cleaning their apartment. So instead of boring us with the process of cleaning the apartment, which is something that happens in the story, instead we are listening to the audiobook that the person is listening to. And so we get a different story. And the same thing I did in a dream, and then that became a 130,000 book novel that was actually just a dream as part of the bigger story that I was making there. See, that's how crazy I am about that. Anyway, so the Obsidian Artifact, Chapter 1, Onset. It's kinda awkward though. What did I tell you about worrying over people's thoughts? Well, I just can't help it, it's automatic. It's a condition is what it is. Alright, many people have it, but don't tell yourself you can't do anything about it. This isn't Alcoholics Anonymous. But just keep reminding yourself that it's wrong. Trust me, it'll take hold. You worry less and less, and then you're free. Takes a few years. Also helps if you keep remembering the logic. You cannot know what they're thinking. So all your beliefs are just assumptions. You'd be locking yourself in with imagination. I mean, why? You're only suffering your own unfounded ideas. If you can't keep your thoughts at bay, maybe you should stop with the weed for a while. Everly briefly thought about this and said, if I would quit smoking, would you quit with me? David didn't hesitate for a second, turned his head and laughed. Hell no! Way too much fun. It's a lifestyle, man. She fleetingly touched his back. That's one thing I love about you. Always so blunt. Blunt. Yeah, let's get on with this already, she said. No, this is too exposed. We can still see the path. If someone comes along... Dave, seriously, who is the paranoid one here? I'm not paranoid, you're rash. It's the addiction speaking. I'm not a fucking addict. He sighed. You know what I mean. The habit's so deeply in you, and you haven't had anything yet today. Yeah, and it's about time. But you're right, I guess. I have to factor all that shit in. Language, baby. Her turn to sigh. I know, do it, but don't overdo it. Yes, oh look at that, someone's coming. Quick, pretend you're kissing me. He knew she'd welcome the opportunity. Pretend wasn't quite the operating term for either of them. She wrapped her arms around him, affectionately hugged his lips with hers, and let him feel the warmth of her bosom. Kissing and tender strokes replaced both their thoughts for a while. I love you. I love you. Like, he didn't respond, didn't have to, knew that she knew. And he had laid out the problem once during their stoner talks. If a person acts due to obligation, then what manifests is not their actual will. It's the will of the other, of the one urging them, who would therefore only be talking to themselves, living in a dream world. It's not coexistence if everybody's just a lonely king, with all the rest being mere actors in their badly written play. Often the two had made each other aware, when serving as a puppet of duty, instead of following conviction and emotion. This had revealed much of who they really were, of their true will and identity. And so, when one of them would say, I love you, it meant something, because I and you were well defined. Both Everly and David knew how lucky they were to have found someone with whom they could really commune hang out, and also have sex. Their love was simple, uncomplicated, the kind people easily confuse to be superficial, because they had forgotten the meaning of implicitness. "He's gone. Stupid dog walkers everywhere." "Yeah," he said, forcing everybody to tread carefully. "Fuckers." "So what do we do? This is a dead end, and the path is still in sight," said Everly. They were all but surrounded by shoulder-high bushes. Not good enough. A single observer strolling the trail that passed in about 20 meters distance, seeing them smoke their consumer-grade origami and telling an incidental policeman would be all it takes. And now I have to interject. The reason why I'm reading this story, this first chapter, is I was telling you I was just writing this spontaneously, and I was steering it to places so that it gets interesting and entertaining. And now we are getting to one of those points. An incidental policeman would be all it takes. "There's a manhole cover here." "Uh-huh." Then he continued, "Wait, what do you mean?" "I mean there's a rectangular, rusty brownish, crisscross ribbed, solid metal plate which I consider to be a manhole cover. Right here." "I see it. And that's not what I meant when I asked what you mean." Everly, with a stern look, "I didn't mean anything, just that it's here." David raised his left eyebrow. "The truth you must find. Into yourself you must look," he carried on, silently moving his lips to imitate badly dubbed Chinese martial arts films. "Huh? You want to toke up? Down there. You know that's crazy, right?" "We could at least take a look, okay? Maybe it's dry." "And without rats and sewage, because you wish it so," David said. But he hunkered down and inspected the metal lid, which was about 70 by 70 centimeters. It sat on a concrete rectangle, standing a bit higher than the unmowed lake of wild grass. 3 solid hinges held one side of the hatch. Everly winced. "There's a lock here, in the grass. It's broken." David turned to where his girlfriend was squatting. He saw a pretty serious padlock, slightly rusty, but in good shape. It was locked. The arc of its shackle showed a gap. He said, "That's not from a bolt cutter. It's too clean. And something, okay, look here, the missing part." David... What? Oh, see, that was the wrong voice. She said that. David saw her pick up a shiny piece of metal. She tried to place it in the lock's shackle. It fit like a glove. "Whoa, is that even sawed?" she asked. "A saw takes out a bit, at least the width of the saw blade." "Yeah, and see," she said, "the piece doesn't sink down in the arc of the shackle. It fits almost perfectly." "Yeah, that must have been the thinnest saw I ever saw." Everly replied, "Speaking of which, can we get on with this? Try to lift up the plate." Now, for those not following, a stoner would be jumping further with their associations, and this association here was the wordplay. The thinnest saw I ever saw is a play of words. This in turn is an association that leads into the direction of toking up. "Why don't you do it? Doesn't look very heavy." "Because you're stronger, so you have more reserves, so you are more in control, so it'll not be that loud, okay now?" Jeez. He carefully worked his fingers under the rounded rim of the rusty plate. It was as heavy, but also as manageable as expected. The hinges moaned a bit, but didn't creak. When David had lifted the lid upright, they both smelled musty, underventilated concrete chamber air. Everly carefully crept closer to the round opening, pushed her hands firmly against the outer wall of the cement frame, and looked down. "It's dark." "You don't say," he replied, while finishing to fold over the metal plate. Then he kneeled down at the hole. They both saw the grey shaft descend for about 4 meters before it opened up into darkness on the 3 sides, whereas the ladder kept on fading into obscurity. "Why would they put a square lid on a round shaft?" he said, Because it's easier to hinge the cover and because it's easier to drill a round hole than a square one. That could be it. Wow, that smells down there. But not like a sewer, right? David said, bit moldy and foul, but that's from water, I think. No, not like a sewer. So what's the plan here, Eve? Those metal rungs are thick as hell. But do they sit in the wall tightly? What if we slip? What if there's no air down there, but gas? Air is a gas? Yeah, but you really did not understand what I was meaning to express, so I now will have to elaborate, he replied sarcastically. And air isn't a gas, it's several. I know, she said, and didn't bother to throw it right back at him. Because now he was being pedantic. Instead, she began to carefully climb down while firmly holding on to the concrete rim. She stuck her feet between the wall and the rungs, tried to pull them out but felt no motion. Continued to climb. Hey, stop! At least drop a match or something. I'm not gonna drop my Zippo into an unknown hole just to make it known, Everly replied. Then she pulled out her lighter anyway, snapped it open and flicked it on. Nothing exploded. They could see the end of the ladder side. The ground was now visible but indiscernible. Eve, remember, nothing happens until it happens. Do you really want to do this? She looked up to him for a bit, then continued to climb down, the hand with the Zippo only holding on to the rungs with 3 fingers. Careful with the ground, it might be water. She slowly set her feet down, one at a time. The ground was firm but dirty, and there were some leaves. She looked around, her blonde hair dimly lit from the blue sky above. It is a sewer, I think. Shh! Don't be so loud! Wait, I'm coming down. David carefully stepped onto the upper rungs and worked himself downwards. The grey concrete shaft was shiny with moisture. The steps were rusty, but it was the calculated kind of oxidation some construction metals built on their surface, sealing them off from further deterioration. These rungs were solid and capable, and not loose at all. He stepped down onto the crispy dry floor and turned his back to the ladder. He found himself in some kind of room. To his left and right, there was an oval tunnel a man could almost comfortably stand in. It descended slightly towards the left, was ascending towards the right. Its ground was a rounded gully, made from flowing water. Gully? But there was none. It was framed with a long platform one could relatively easily walk on. The short extent of this tunnel they could see was really dry, and there were no rats either, currently. In the direction that led away from the rungs, the place they were standing in was just a rectangular concrete box, a bit taller than the pipe tunnels. It seemed to be rather long. David believed to see the far end with more openings in about 7 meters distance. There were several metal pipes affixed to the right wall, reaching into the dark, about as thick as an arm, some short, some of indeterminate length. They did not seem to lead anywhere. Instead, they just began and ended in arbitrary places. Some of them featured valve wheels. This looks a bit unfinished to me, said Everly. Maybe it is, David replied, and pulled out his own Zippo, a birthday present, whose engraved metal mirrored the yellow light of her flame and hand. It showed his initials, DK, and an octopus, which she hadn't really explained, but he assumed it was about his ability to roll splifferettes while driving the car, and about her fondness of his fondleness when they got busy. He lit the flame. "Want to check around?" she asked, still standing near the ladder. "Yeah, just a bit." "I'ma wait here." "Yeah." He passed an extensive but shallow puddle of smelly water and soon reached the far end of the concrete box. The wall opened into another tunnel, descending rather steeply into the dark. Walkable if dry, but David wasn't keen on taking unnecessary risks. And another walk-in tunnel to the right, also ascending slightly, like its partner at the ladder. The left wall showed whitish spray paint, a rough circle and a large X inside it, as well as the letters D185BL. David lifted his flame to the far end of one of the pipes, all of which were apparently without function, an incomplete construct. He could see a round flickering spot on the far wall where Everly was waiting. She didn't say anything. They were still getting used to the quiet down here. The wind in trees and grass, occasionally dominating the atmosphere above, was now inaudible. The stale air of the would-be sewer didn't seem to move. He walked a few meters into the right tunnel, casting unsteady light at the spray-painted wall, mostly obscured by his own body. She beheld the animated shadow, then heard him whistle one time. He was apparently trying to feel further into the tunnel without having to actually go there. Finally, the light projection changed, became full. He had turned around and was coming back. Don't know how extensive this is, if it connects anywhere. Feels like a work in progress. He approached the blonde hair and face he saw in the distance, which was lit with bluish light from above and all over by the yellow, wavering flame. She replied, "And abandoned. Not too rare that someone kicks off some construction with our hard-earned cash. Our parents' hard-earned cash." That's what I said. "And it ends up being superfluous, outdated, useless." Useless? She said while pulling out the empty chocolate box with the 2 hemp rockets they had rolled for their kickoff into the rest of the day. Hours in which they'd cozily lie together on the couch and or cushy armchairs, eat pizza, chips, chocolate, and would possibly watch a movie they had already seen again, while just being there and somehow loving all of it. He killed his Zippo and watched her carefully burn the rim of the blunt's paper cap. She plucked it away and readied herself for the initial kick of the tobacco and hemp that would hit once she'd light up. David also craved to inhale, to wrap himself into that altered state of mind and body. It was like hunger, except not for food, but quite like hunger. She lit the fire and pulled on the joint. She believed to see the red glow add to the colors on her. He believed to see the red glow add to the colors on her face, but not only was this drowned in the lightest flame, the paper construct was also just too long. It was made of the length of 3 standard cigarette papers, slightly overlapping, and shortened a bit because the shape hadn't been filled to the very end, hence the cap of twisted up paper. The joint was also rather thick, 2 cigarette paper breadths, connected to a pipe that became somewhat conical near the self-rolled cardboard filter, which didn't filter anything at all but prevented waste of material and allowed a stable grip that didn't burn one's fingers. She didn't pull strongly, only as much as necessary to light the joint properly and to get a good load of smoke. They both had no interest in risking uneven, run-amok burn that would ruin the experience. After holding her breath for a few moments, she exhaled, snapped her lighter shut, and breathed a few more times, then took another toke. The mixture was kicking like a mule, but this was only the initial onset, and half of it was the tobacco. Once she'd be in the drift, smoking would only feel like a push, not like clobbering. Not that she didn't also love the latter. She held her right hand, palm downward, out to David, who carefully pulled the glowing candle from between her fingers. The couple stayed quiet during the ritual. The tension was high. That pleasurable, fidgety prospect of performing another, reasonably sober liftoff. She was already being pulled in. Now it was his turn to let the door walk through him. He concentrated on the joint and inhaled, slowly but deeply. He held it in for a while, all quiet, then exhaled towards the originally left tunnel, which was now to his right, as he was facing Everly, who stood at the ladder rungs. He took another deep breath through the glowing stick of brain incense and handed it back to her. And so it continued, all quiet, except for the breathing and some remote humming in the strange, wide yet claustrophobic acoustics of the sewer bunker. They were both full of the heavy flow they had invited into their bodies and were still piling up on. They loved to smoke joints quite more than hitting the bong. The latter was comfortable and quick when indoors to get another lasting kick, but it joined rather smoothly, took them on a flight with every breath. It was more intimate, a ritual, a shared experience, less about just getting high. They kept smoking until there were only about 2 centimeters left, which meant cardboard filter plus about half a centimeter of pure tobacco. David walked a few steps and dropped the butt into the puddle, where it died with a short, sparkly-sounding hiss. Even though he was full of the heavy, he playfully flicked one of the useless pipes on the wall with a short pling, falling into lower ringing that lasted for a moment, drenched in the acoustic ambience of the underground concrete place. Then they stood face to face, both staring at no particular point in front of them, at about belly height. Their consciousnesses were busy looking at different things, at the feeling, the heaviness, and the fuzz that was now in their minds. Noise that isn't loud, painless chaos. With drifting thoughts that reflected on the place they were in, out in that unspecific gradient between the park and the forest. Meters below bushes, beyond which the occasional person was promenading in the afternoon sun. They felt the paranoia of thoughts like, what if someone smells the weed smoke escaping out the open manhole? For which one would first have to walk 20 meters across the unmowed grass and around a couple of bushes, improbable but not impossible. Or what if someone were to take a leak up there right now? Everly moved away from the opening just in case. David noticed it, but said nothing. They were both engrossed in the heavy mind and body drift. Finally, Everly said, "Think we should keep the other?" "I concur." They had had enough for the time being. "Good place, this," she said. "Not too far from the house," he replied. They mostly hung out at his place, because it proved so well that basement dweller is not actually an insult, just like fucker isn't. David had created his boy cave in his parents' cellar. Years before this, they had installed a modern heater which was no longer in the basement, and so it had become just a place in the house, plus of course the inlet for water, gas, electricity and telephone internet. No reason to go down there, just what he needed to make a cozy place to hang out in, his hash cave. Not too obvious, but if someone would know, they'd see it. The remains on the table, the glass bong behind the couch, the posters. David could even turn the place all dark to only let 2 long black light tubes guide them along the highway of slow, deep rhythms. His parents didn't have any idea. Together they were just an old-school nuclear family. Mother, housewife, and David's father actually held physics lectures at the university. His brother, 6 years older, had become a sales something or other and had moved out years ago. Damn it, where can I go? Let's see here. Had become a sales something or other and had moved out years ago. David himself was still in high school, not yet 18, and had all the freedom he could want. His grades were okay, so it didn't matter that most of his homework often looked suspiciously like someone else's. "Let's go back," Everly said. "I want to sit." "Me too." But David was too curious. "What's the humming? You hear it?" Everly stood and listened for a moment. "Some electrics, what else?" "Yeah, probably. But ain't this unused?" She kept staring to her right, at his nose, through her half-closed eyes, with half-open mouth. Then she made a sudden and slightly drunken arm gesture to their left, pointed at the tunnel below the ladder that breached the wall on the side with the incomplete pipes. "There." "Yep. I'ma check." Okay if I wait?" she said. "Yeah." And off he went, ascending the tunnel left of the rungs, his Zippo lighting the way. A few meters in he said, "It's getting louder." Everly could see him slowly walk away in the straight, slightly ascending water passage. After about 15 meters, he stopped. It felt creepy to be so distant from him, down here in this mysterious, yet oddly civilized place, right below the ordinary everyday mood of the park. It felt even more spooky when he vanished into a side path of sorts. Everly just stared, longed to get back into his cave again, to snuggle up to his warmth and the trippy music in which they would bathe. Then she heard him in the distance, hollow but clearly. "Everly? Yes? Dude, there's like some kind of astronaut guy here." She placed her left fist on her hip and produced a humorously skeptical face despite nobody being there to see it. Then, glad to have a reason to lessen the distance, and trusting the unknown territory was now tested and mapped, she slowly walked into the tunnel, intently audible as she did so, the lighter in her raised right hand like a torch. The humming was growing louder. It was not of the electrical kind, where metal is being vibrated by a magnetic field. No, it was softer, slowly wavering, and with random modulations, but always the same very low note. After way too long a time, she said, "A what?" David's voice reverse echoed towards her, "Man, you gotta see this!" "Coming!" She was curious despite being so dunked in THC honey and only wanting to chill. Her deep mellow caved even further when curiosity became fear. She had turned right and could now see the small elevated chamber. It had another ascending tunnel as at its back wall was a box room like the one they had left, except a lot shorter, and it appeared without any pipes. David was standing almost upright in it, his hands pushing against the top of his knees. His face was pointed down at the sitting body. He was slowly leaning left and right to take it all in. "David, is that a dead man?" "It's not a man." She gave him a look. "Seriously? Kinda shit? That's a corpse, Dave. Let's get out of here right now." "Shh," he said. "Calm down." But she refused. "They be looking for him. We should go." She curiously surveyed the legs of the strange full body suit. "That's the sewer inspector. God knows what killed him. We need to get away." "Turn off your light." "Dave, would you please calm down and just do it?" Her gears were spinning freely, but she flicked her zipper shut. It was only now that she realized David's lighter hadn't been on, but it wasn't dark. As David kept leaning to the left and right, she saw the shape of his slightly sweaty face accentuated by bluish light reflections. Then she saw his lips move. He spoke quietly. "What's a sewer inspector doing in a completely dry sewer?" And added, "In an anti-shit suit. Doesn't compute, man." Everly just stared. It slowly dawned on her where the light was coming from, and the humming. The body was fully suited up, including a helmet whose front consisted of two vertical plates that met at an acute angle in front of where the nose would be. The plates were blue glass or blue field. She looked closely and could see the weak glow wasn't constant but showed wandering smears and vortices, weakly flickering spots. She was wise enough not to touch it. Instead, she blew in its direction. "Whoa," said David. "Disco!" Almost like air lit by a cyan blue laser, moving so quickly that it would seem like a wall. Everly's blowing had excited the strange activity in the laser light. Dust was drifting in, but didn't light up like one would expect. Instead, only fading vortices and wandering streaks. "Why did you say it's not a man?" David shook his head slightly. "Seriously, Eve? Do I have to spell it?" Everly kept staring. Her eyes wandered down to the hips of the sitting suit. Gloves with 4 fingers, including the thumb. Apart from this and the science fiction helmet, there was no reason to assume they were not dealing with a, probably dead, human being. She hunkered down and touched the right hand. "No," he said reflexively. The material felt like thin rubber or plastic, wavy, not tight. She could feel the hand inside. It was cold and lifeless. "Poor guy," she said. "I mean, yeah, I get it. Not a guy. I called first contact. You're so insensitive. And I touched him first, so how's that for contact? Dude, I literally stumbled over his legs. Okay, cause I decided to go down here, Everly argued. But I made contact. Not with your skin, you didn't. David looked, then reached on out to the blue glass, but Everly slapped his arm down. Don't! He looked at her in shock, not because of what she had done, but because it dawned on him why. She searched in her pockets and found a bit of thin cardboard, chocolate carton that worked well as a filter. She held it out in her left, while her right was a clenched fist around her shut Zippo. Careful! David whispered much too loud. She moved in with a corner of the torn cardboard, slowly got close to the cyan blue light. When she touched it, the hum suddenly grew loud, sharper. Magenta sparks exploded in the laser pane, then drifted into smears that faded, and the hum retreated again. She quickly pulled her hand back. It's gone, she whispered. Why are we whispering? He whispered. You started it! Yes, but why? She said normally. The filter is gone. In that place. Burned? Dunno. She lit her fire and took a close look. It's black on the edge. Only there. David felt awkward. Wow, this burnt stuff. Yes, it does, she said. Thank me later. What if he gets itchy face? He asked. Same as any astronaut. It itches. Yeah, I guess, but what if he forgets? Emily just stared. He continued. Do they lose fingers in training until they get it? I don't think what's the 4 fingers about. Have 4. You think he's from Springfield? David laughed. What, like yellow skin? It's not transparent. Huh? She asked. The blue light. Even when it flashed pink, couldn't see his face. Well, it's not glass. How does he see then? He asked. Everly grabbed the glove again, tried to lift it. The arm was moderately heavy, but it was not stiff. What are you doing? David was puzzled. She kept lifting the glove higher, guided the lifeless limb towards the blue light. Eve? She got near its surface, then very slowly moved the tips of her hand closer. What if he's only sleeping? He warned. She touched the blue wall. The tips of the glove sunk in, but there were no flashes. The hum stayed gentle. The fingers were surrounded by light just as if crossing a disco laser, except from all sides, even between the fingers, where there ought to be shadow, at least in some places. They realized that it had to be an actual wall of light, not just a wandering beam. Pull him out, he said fiercely. She did. Oh, he said. The suit goes through. Huh, well, mystery solved. When it itches, he scratches. Dave, you're an idiot. This dude's from space, man. We found a space dude. Yeah, a dead one. Whatever killed him. What are you doing? Everly said, what's it look like? Wanna check the pockets? Okay, remember my fingers that I still have? Can't open. These bulges are porks, right? No idea. The way they're spread, maybe. Just all closed, no lid, no zipper. Everly kept feeling up the broad rectangular bulges at the front of the strange suit. There clearly were objects inside, but the material was entirely seamless. David wondered, maybe only Space Dude can open them. Everly looked at him, then grabbed the body's right glove again. She lifted the open palm to one of the bulges and laid it flat against it. Nothing happened. David said, maybe... But she pushed the glove upwards, stroking the upper part of the bulge. Motherfucker, he said. Fuck yeah, a seam and it's open. Careful, Eve. Maybe it's a trap. Dude? I mean, your hand could get hurt cause it's not his. You mean the suit has car alarm? With teeth. Well then, she said, and worked one of the body's gloves fingers into the pockets to pull it wide. Then she crept up on the torso to take a look, while taking care not to get close to the helmet, using her Zippo to shine into the opening. There's something inside. I mean, I can see... She pulled her lighter away and tried to mechanically work the pocket's content out the top, was basically massaging it. The materials seemed to have extremely high friction on the inside. It did not slip over whatever the content was, or over the pocket's backside. Rubbing doesn't work. David hunkered down next to her, held the arm of the apparently dead stranger so it would be easier for her to work the pockets, and he said, "Try his fingers." "That's what she said." They both laughed. Then she grabbed the gloved hand, which was flexible like that of a living person, and managed to stick 2 gloved fingers into the pocket. They were not affected by the high friction. But she couldn't make them grab the object, at least not without getting dangerously close to the pocket's mouth, and that's not what she was willing to risk. Everly pulled the glove out of the pockets, then laid it on another, moved the palm upwards. Now there were 2 open pockets. She did not bother tampering with the new one. Instead, she opened all that she could see. "What are you doing?" "Help me," she said while getting up. She walked over to the body's legs and bent down. David moved there too. "What's the plan here, Eve?" "Want to turn him over." "Dude!" "What?" she asked as if her intent was of the most trivial nature. "Huh," he replied with a face of intrigued understanding. They both grabbed the suit's legs and the boots, seamlessly one with the rest, and tried to lift them up. They weren't extraordinarily heavy, quite like human legs. And indeed, they both felt like they were tampering with a dead human body. Though ethically speaking, it didn't really matter what kind of intelligent being's corpse they were meddling with, if it was a corpse. They turned away from the body, stepped forwards, then the opening through which they had entered the room was to their right. They dragged the body away from the wall. They heard the torso slip to the ground, then a full thud from the helmeted head. Then they ducked and worked the body's lower legs onto their shoulders. Everly the right, and David, further away from the entrance, the left. Pulled the shanks down in front of them to leverage more height, then struggled gruntingly to get up again. The body's rear end was lifting off the ground, the torso becoming diagonal. "More!" groaned Everly. They stood up straight, the torso hanging downwards, the glowing helmet lying on its back, lighting up the ceiling as if it were the night sky. Everly single-mindedly started to shake herself up and down. It was heavy lifting. David hesitated, but joined in. They were trying to shake loose whatever was resting in the strange suit's pockets, but nothing happened. "The pockets are too sticky," David groaned. Fuck! Keep at it!" She kept shaking, and so did he. Breathing and wheezing became suspiration and perspiration. "Eve, keep going! Two ways to get high," he said. "At least we both made first contact." She couldn't hear his response over the screamingly loud hum and its sharpness she hadn't known was acoustically possible. The ceiling was no longer dark blue. Instead, the entire room was brighter than a summer day in pure cyan. They twitched away from each other, heavily dropping the legs between them. Couldn't hear them hit the ground. She saw David's lips move and his tongue, and the ovula of his wide-open mouth filled with a penetrating light. But she couldn't even tell if he was using his voice box over the deep, loud hum they both felt in their bones. They glanced at the helmet, protecting their eyes with their hands, instantly looking away. The blue glow had become a full-powered stadium light, white from the looks of it, but the room's walls made clear their eyes were betrayed by the incredible brightness. Panic-stricken, Everly grabbed David's arm, pulled him towards the exit, but he freed himself, hunkered down near the helmet, facing away from it, but the room didn't seem to realize he should be casting a shadow. She saw him doing something on the ground, repeatedly, as if he was picking up things. Helplessly, because she saw herself out of options, other than leaving her friend behind, she screamed at him, "Run, David!" but could barely hear herself. He had gotten up and was fumbling around with his cargo pant legs. She was about to leave but still hesitated. Then he finally turned to her, stepping over, grabbed her arm and pulled her towards the tunnel that led deeper into the sewers. She fought him, screamed, desperate because the earth-shattering, bone-vibrating hum was replacing any and all sounds, but he was too strong. Then finally, once she had been stumbled through the opening, she understood they were going the right way. The brightness was incredible. They ran the 15 meters downwards the sewer tunnel and they could see everything. Got to the long entrance box room in no time. The cyan light even reached into the ladder shaft. David shoved Everly up the rungs. In quite the same speed she was hastily climbing up anyway. The afternoon sky above looked weird, because it was of semi-saturated cyan blue, but much less bright than what they had seen deeper in the tunnel, so it felt as if they were entering an indoor space. Everly all but jumped out of the opening, still half deaf from the brutal hum that, atop the sewer shaft, sounded like Satan speaking the word Doom through the largest subwoofer ever built, Doom, suddenly rising in volume by 100%, which would have completely annihilated their eardrums were they still in the claustrophobic dungeon bathed in cyan light. Then suddenly the frequency changed, it dropped down exponentially, ultimately plunging into 0 Hz, blasting a shockwave through the underground tunnels, blowing up through the ladder shaft, throwing David and over Everly into the grass against a bush, which was set aflame by the cone of cyan light that shone almost vertically into the sky, only meters from them. Reflections from burning trees and peripheral light scorched their hair and ears, burned their hands, and would have killed their eyes had they not been facing away. Through the numbness of their battered ears, they heard the shouting of panicking citizens and also terrible screams of pain, a cannon, a duet, an opening in reality through which hell could be heard. David and Everly moved away from the burning bushes on all fours towards the open sea of grass that separated them from the path. They finally got up, realized the screams were just car alarms, then realized the car alarms were screams. Understood it was both, were terrified because some of the former had really been the latter. Then a dead bird thumped onto the ground nearby. The cone of light was gone. They thought it had only lasted for the fraction of a second, but couldn't be sure because their senses had been overwhelmed. They had reached the path, turned around once more, and saw a small forest fire. The actual forest was further out. There were only few trees, mostly grass, and some bushes in the area. But what could burn did so. They walked at elevated pace back in the direction of the house, which was only about 2 kilometers from here, but when the path split, they turned right, closer to the small inferno. The path split again, and once more they chose the closer way. They just had to know what they probably had unleashed. They saw a few people gathering in a group, agitated speech, pointing perplexity. More folks were walking and running towards the assembly. Overall, Everly and David counted about 15. Their bodies were still stoned, but their minds had dug themselves free by the power of sheer experience. Emotion, not just the painful burnt skin. They joined the crowd, saw some staring faces, but they were not the only ones with wounds from the incredible light. Through gaps between the people, they could see the ground on fire. They traversed the gathering almost peripherally, without significant attention, and kept approaching the chaos. 30 more meters until the hole. A wide opening in the ground, the shape of which they couldn't determine due to burning shrubbery and trees, but they had a good wide view of the sudden apocalypse. The terrible screaming was closer than before. The car alarms had thinned out. David and Everly had slowed down but kept approaching the chaos, still not really conscious of the significant pain of their own wounds because of the shock and the tension. The view widened, the abyss became apparent. A little. "My God," said Everly. David remained quiet. The pit wasn't yet fully visible, and there was a lot of smoke and what seemed to be steam. But they could see that the hole had a diameter of almost 20 meters, ended only a few meters behind the burning bushes from where they had exited the manhole that was still intact. As far as they could tell, despite changes in elevation and other distractions, the gaping maw was perfectly round, with a sloped wall that seemed completely smooth, black like Everly's filter carton. A funnel, a geometric anomaly in the landscape. As they got closer, the catastrophic annihilation revealed itself to be a literal cross-section with cut pipes that were glowing red, burning cables, torn open caverns revealing more of the abandoned in-progress sewer project. They heard the roaring of broken high-pressure pipes and saw red glow from the depths, possibly a reflection of burning vegetation in the black wall between is and isn't. Then they saw the dog, some pincher type, cut in half, the back section just not existing, the torso sealed with a layer of shiny blackness, charred with so much suddenness and heat the carbon had turned to diamond. The dog seemed to move, but it had been long dead. David laid his arm around Everly, held her despite their skin that had suffered burns even under the long, early spring sleeves. Everly's eyes were wide. She peed her pants in terror. The woman who must have been strolling the park with the dog was still tugging on its leash. Her right leg and arm and about 1/3 of her torso were gone. Her need to breathe and insuppressible twitching had shattered the thin layer of diamond in several places, but the flesh had been boiled to a solid mass that would not allow bleeding. The purposeless flailing and quivering of her remaining limbs, a helpless attempt to somehow get away from the place of pain, caused her nothing but grief. Her hair was smoldering, her screams and whimpers were horrific. David wanted to help, but he knew not how. She was so destroyed. He cried silently, saw the burnt face, the desperation. She was probably blind, was screaming, only articulating agony. What would have been her panicked look to the outside for help and escape was replaced by the undisturbed study of her own torture, of the irrevocable process of her organism dying. Oh, why couldn't it happen more quickly? It kept creeping towards her like a snail, forced her mind to stare at it, left her to only pitiably whine in the smoldering grass next to the black funnel. The parts of her body that still functioned, so dependent on the parts that didn't, cascadingly switched to red alert, unknowable pain mushrooming through her flesh. She was in hell and the flames were rising. David could hear sirens in the distance and finally forced Everly to turn around with him. They slowly walked away from the horror, only to realize dreadful screams and moans were also coming from other directions. Every step forward let the individual voices of suffering souls merge into the background of roaring fire and approaching sirens. But with every step they understood more the incredible guilt. Their easy drifting was at an end. They had done this. Somehow. Had exploded the garden, had taken lives, disfigured bodies. They had acted upon the world more than a human could hope to do in a decade, and all they had given was devastation. Now it was time for the world to act upon them. They felt it, accepted it. Their guilt was true. The crowd had grown. Some had already begun to approach the maw of hell, but the two paid them no mind. Some saw the deadness in Davis and Everly's faces, the chiseled terror, and they mirrored back fear of what must be out there at the hole. The two moved on to where the path had split last and walked to the right, still away from the house, towards the sirens. They saw birds lying dead on the ground, some smoldering, some twitching. The cone of cyan light must have had engulfed half the sky. They saw blue and red flashes in the distance. The path took a wide turn to the right. God damn it. Okay. Red flashes in the distance. The path took a wide turn to the right. The receding flora revealed the hills above the forest. They walked silently, the murmur of mayhem always to their right. They were circling it. They kept hearing its accusations. The path ultimately led to a large gravel square with dirty outdoor table tennis. Bicycle stands and a chippy that due to its remoteness, had opening days so randomly seeming that it wasn't a surprise the building was once again changing owners and was therefore temporarily closed. An ambulance and 2 police cars had arrived from the adjacent road, with more on the way apparently. The sunlit gravel faintly reflected the silent flashes of red and blue. The ambulance must have just arrived. 2 male EMTs were exiting the van. The driver stayed in her seat. They were looking to the cops for instructions instead of hasting into the unknown. The cops in turn were partly approaching the infernal cross-country, partly standing around 2 of their own who were talking with their cars via their cars' radios. The EMTs, willing but quasi-unable to help, saw the approaching couple and jogged towards them. Before David could say anything, one of them asked, "Are you hurt?" And seeing them more closely, "What injuries do you have?" David automatically answered, "Just burns from the light," even though he hated the thought that, of all the people, they'd be the first to receive treatment. Come on, music, don't fuck with me. Of all the people, they'd be the first to receive treatment. "What light?" asked the other EMT. David, still numbed by the burden of guilt and terror, only began to realize that the team had no clear idea of why they were even here. Everly said quietly into their vacuum of interest, "There was light. From underground. It was a flash, cyan. Set trees on fire. Burned a crater in the park. It burned everyone." David nodded thoughtfully. "It's a nightmare over there. Will give you dreams for sure. I'm not kidding." The EMTs looked at each other. They could hear more sirens in the distance. "Come to the back, we have to look after those burns," said one of them and turned back to the ambulance. The other followed. Everly whispered, "Should we tell them about the astronaut?" "Would be useless." As the 2 started walking, she continued, "David, I think we should tell them." And before he could respond, "What we have done, they need to know. You saw." David stopped and turned to Everly, who also stopped. "Eve, I know what we have done. I've thought about this all the time. We should not try to bury this. We did this." "Yes, we should tell the cops. But we can't." "What? Do you really worry that cause that joint? That's low, man." They saw one of the EMTs look over to them, out from the ambulance's open backside, which was facing half away. "Everly, hear me out. We could get rid of the joint and stuff and then walk to the cops, but dude, let me fucking speak. It would be useless to add their stupid fear of hemp to the list of our crimes and become another figurehead for," he waved his hands and spoke parodying cartoon doomsayers, "the dangers of drug abuse." She waited. He continued, "But that's not all. When the guy lit up, I picked up his gear. His alien gear." "Right, I remember now. But how does that change anything?" 3 more ambulances were approaching from the adjacent street. "Eve, this is alien tech. It'll end up in the hands of the Gov." "Guess so. But don't you think other Govs will want it too? The Flash won't stay a secret, and someone could be out here with a photo camera, reporters, anyone. And the hole's visible from the sky." "What do you mean?" "I mean war, Eve. There could be war over this shit." Eve looked at him, confounded. David continued on to the ambulance. She didn't. Thought about his words. Nations fighting over alien technology to gain the edge, or to prevent others from having it. She understood it conceptually, but its depth was beyond her grasp. A tree had suddenly grown in her small vivarium, cracked the glass dome. Whenever she tried to really understand what was possibly at stake, her mind was climbing among the branches far above her dome. Around her, the blackness of the unknown. Below her, a brightly lit garden, and all she wanted was to return and sit on a bench in the sun. But the dome was cracked. The tree wouldn't go away. Eventually, she continued on to the ambulance. The large gravel square was quite crowded now. 4 ambulances, a 3rd cruiser just pulling in. Some EMTs meeting the first park strollers that were arriving. Some medics carrying empty stretchers, and following cops through the bushes. Some of them must have ripped out or cut away. Everly saw David. His upper body was naked, the skin on his backside all red, but it wasn't burned where his clothes had protected him. His hands and ears were a different story. They were all shiny, apparently from some gel the EMT had applied, who was now also wrapping a thin layer of gauze around David's neck, fingers and hands. She could not see the other medic. "Are you alright?" the EMT said. Are you alright? The EMT said 1st and 2nd degree burns. Should be gone in 2 weeks. Change the dressing daily in the first days, alright? Here's your tube. The sunburns don't matter, just be careful for a while. No lying at the beach. Now to you, young lady. David got up, stepped out onto the gravel, touched the burnt hair on the back of his head with his gauzed right. They both saw the other EMT approaching the ambulance. A cop was with him. Everly swallowed audibly, then finally climbed into the ambulance. The policeman, black, in his 40s, mutton chops with some grey streaks, pointed from the hip and asked his companion, "That him?" David stood nervously. The EMT, "Where's the girl?" David, to appear confident and innocuous, just pointed his head and eyes at the ambulance's rear, then returned his view to the approaching men. Then finally, they could see Everly in the back. The cop said, "You saw what happened?" David said, "Who didn't?" He immediately felt like an idiot for overdoing the cool. "Well," said the officer, "almost everybody I talked to is now blind, so..." "Oh no," said Everly, who was receiving her cleaning and gel treatment, and David felt even more like an idiot. The EMT asked, "You were with David when it happened?" "Yeah." "No need to disrobe, you'll have the same sunburns. I can dress your neck and hands just fine." "So, what did you see?" asked the cop. Damn. And now this is annoying. This is when it's not edited but real time. Heh. Okay. "So, what did you see?" asked the cop. David and Everly looked at each other. The cop continued, "They saw a sudden light, so bright they were instantly blinded. You said it was cyan? Did you look at it?" She said nothing, was overburdened. They were dealing with an official. Words had different weight now. The potential mass to be moved directly touched her brain cells. This is me sneaking in my theistic worldview, where I say, yeah, well, you can actually feel the world around you because Newton's third law applies to the mind directly and we're just not aware of it, because that itself is a realization that would have so much impact, that it has so much weight, that it cannot be had until mankind has really woken up. Anyway, let's return to the story. Words had different weight now. The potential mass to be moved directly touched her brain cells. David said, "We were in the park." Made the cop. "We heard a loud noise, low roar." Made the cop. Then it suddenly stopped. Instead, there was a boom, like an explosion. Made the cop. Then we saw the flash. "How did you see it?" David replied, "We were facing away from the hole." Yeah, that's the thing. So were some of the witnesses I spoke to. They were blind regardless. Not completely, but blinded regardless. Not completely, but your eyes seem to be just fine. We were on the ground," Everly blushed. "On the ground, And closed our eyes when we heard the explosion." Made the cop. "I saw my own shadow through my eyelids. Or squinted eyes? Not sure. The light was cyan, I'm certain of it. I don't remember how long it lasted, maybe just a flash." And then what happened? "The bushes caught fire and my skin hurt. We got up and walked away from the fire. Later we saw the ginormous hole." "Tell me about it." "Yeah." The cop seemed a bit confused. "Tell me about the hole." "Oh, it's a funnel. Like someone cut a hole in the park with a giant knife. The walls are all black, cut through everything. You can even see the sewers." Everly bit the corner of her lip. "And oh, we saw the woman." "Yes, we know. You don't have to talk about them." Them. David felt his heart sink. He remembered the woman who had been hurt beyond all hope of recovery, her screams, and the others they had only heard. He cried again, silently. The cop said, "Son, the world's a big place. Did you know over 100,000 people die every day?" David just looked. That don't make anything better, but just remind yourself how bad it would be to see all that happening. You don't see it, so you can live your life, and that's the way it's supposed to be. Today, you saw some of that death. That's the difference. Don't let it get to you. There's also a billion laughters that you're not hearing, right? Now, could I have both your names, please, for the report? David snuffled and wiped the tears off his face with both his gauzed hands. "I'm David Koss." The cop turned to Everly, just looked at her. "I'm Everly Brown-Green." With a hyphen. My parents are idiots. Okay. Oh, my name's Hayes. I want you two to go home now, okay? Do not stick around. And with that, he turned back and left for the half-dozen cop cars that had gathered. The medic was done with Everly. "Thank you, mister," she said. "It's what I do," he replied, and the other NT outside smiled up to her. She climbed out of the ambulance and walked a couple of meters with David. "But we caused this," she almost whispered to him. "Yeah, the cop's not wrong, but this is different. We did this. If only I hadn't make us turn the space suit upside down. Yeah, you couldn't expect him to fucking explode. Yeah, but still, why'd he explode though? That wasn't car alarm, right?" David chuckled. "Well, your plan worked, Eve. Don't know if his pockets would have bitten us. Anyway, gravity did the trick. I picked up his stuff. Remember? About that, what will we do with that?" "Well," David said, "we'll definitely take a look at it, right?" "Are you out of your fucking mind? Have you not seen the fucking hole?" "I'm not gonna toss out these pants, man. I'm gonna empty those pockets. But not at the house. You could kill the whole neighborhood." Where should we go then? Where can we hide this stuff?" Everly didn't respond. Anyway, I think what happened is one of his things fell into his helmet force field, and that wasn't good. Yeah, that could be it. Wow, but how could there be so much power in there? Have you heard of antimatter reactions? Kinda. No? David said. They are a few hundred times more powerful than fusion reactions. Fusion reactions? Okay, so Hiroshima and Nagasaki were nuclear fission bombs. Kid stuff. The Tsar fusion bomb the Russians tested was over 1,500 times as strong as both those fission bombs together, and they had even scaled it down for the test. The sun also uses fusion to light us up. Its fusion is probably more efficient than what we can create down here. And here's the thing. If you toss a bunch of antimatter together with a bunch of matter, you get an explosion that is a few hundred times more powerful than nuclear fusion of sun quality of the same amount of materials. Yeah. So that's what an antimatter explosion looks like? No, I'm just saying you can store a heck of a lot of energy in a small space. If you're an alien, I mean, we can't do that yet. Where's his spaceship? David stopped. He was confounded. He hadn't thought about this yet, and it changed everything. Shit, wherever it is, they will find it. Yeah, said Everly. Then we have to find it first, he said quietly, looking in no particular direction above them. Damned. Yeah, else the Govs will fight over it. Yeah, he said, interstellar ship, with God knows what energy source inside. The physics alone will flip the world. She said, and they can they even decode it? I mean, maybe it's too foreign, he said. That makes it even more dangerous, remember? Right. I just don't get how there can even be interstellar travel. It's basically impossible. She said, the guy is here, was here, So it is possible? Why would it be impossible? He said, because of the speed of light. I never got that. Nothing can travel faster, right? But, yup. But that means, what happens when you fly a spaceship that can go that fast? Oh, I think I get it. That stuff you throw out the back will fly so fast away that you can no longer push against it, yes? No, not quite. You can fly as fast as you want. Relativity is the problem. Okay, which one is it now? Well, David continued walking and Everly followed next to him. Relativity means if you're in space and you're not accelerating but just drift along, the universe works exactly the same as for anyone else in that situation, no matter how fast or slow they are. If the other guy is zipping towards you at crazy speed, but it's just drifting, not accelerating, the same rules apply to him. You don't have the same speed and direction, but everything else is the same. He's not faster than you, you're not faster than him, because none of you is like closer or further away from some kind of objective speed, or from absolute zero. There is no such thing. You're just there. Oh, and the key is, the speed of light is the same. Don't matter where the light came from a star, from you, from him, everybody will measure the same speed, even the guy who's flying towards you. So it's not like throwing a ball from a moving car where it adds up. It stays constant. It's so major, a German dude called Max Planck proposed to call it speed 1. Which kind of makes sense. Depending on how you interpret the equations, you could say that everything ever moves at the speed of light, through space-time, not just through space, obviously. Anyway, the Planck dude was too late. We already have all those nice units. Like miles and feet and gallons? Obviously, I'm talking proper units, not our ass backwards crap. So what happens when you reach the speed of light? Well, imagine you're in space. And you turn on your drive for a minute, and then you turn it off again. You will have gotten faster, and if you do that again, for a minute, you will again have gone faster. By the same amount. Because in between that, you're just an object in space, drifting. Same rules apply to all of these, no matter how fast. So it won't matter how that you have gotten faster than before. Things still work the same. So if you keep doing that, you will always get faster. By the same amount every time, if there's nothing holding you back. Objects, radiation pressure. If it's just you and in space. But you can't fly faster than light. This is the part where you start making sense, yes? Let's take a practical example. Andromeda Galaxy. 2.5 million light years away. That's the time it takes for light to get there. Now, if you sit in your spaceship and you turn on your superdrive and accelerate like a maniac, you can make the trip in any short time you can think of. For example, let's say 1 second. What? Yes, there's nothing fundamentally stopping you from making the trip in that time. And here's the trick. Since you always see light at the same speed, no matter where it came from Andromeda or from your crazy bullet spaceship, something else has to change so that you can be this fast. Time changes. I've heard that one. Time dilation? Never got it though. It's just one ear in, out the other. Eve, it's really simple. You just have to think about it a few times and eventually you get it. If you experience a trip of 1 second for something that, before your flight, looked to be 2.5 million light years, so you'd have to fly for at least a bit more than 2.5 million years to get there, because you can't be as fast as light itself. So if you do that in 1 second subjective time, then this can only mean that your own time is slower. You are just happening more slowly. And the universe around you happens a lot faster from your perspective. When you arrive, the guys on Earth and the guys in Andromeda will have aged by a bit more than 2.5 million years, but you will only be 1 second older. And then, of course, you explode the entire star system when you impact on the planet, because that's what energy does, you know? If you pile up enough of it, you could just send one atom on the journey. If it's fast enough, it can blast an entire cluster of galaxy to bits. Just has to be enough energy. Nobody has that amount of juice. That's why we're still here. It just doesn't happen. But it could. But it won't. Basically can't. Okay, so if you watch me fly that fast, you see me blink super slowly? Yeah. would take you a million years from my perspective, and if you see me blink, you wouldn't even see my lifetime, that's how fast it would be. It'd just be a static noise blip for a microsecond or so. But you wouldn't really see it, because all light that reaches you from the back would be so very dark. We call it redshift. The waves, or what they are, would be a lot slower. Not the light itself though, it would be just as fast as before. Only the sound it carries would be like slow-mo. Actually, that is why you need to turn up the bass so much to enjoy it. It carries less energy. It's like the back and forth is taking place less, so less is happening, less energy. And the back and forth of a high tone is much faster, even if the volume is the same. It would have much more energy, that's why it's louder. So whatever's in front of your spaceship would probably destroy you with its brightness. Oh crap, the cyan light! More than that, much more. At that mega speed, it would be blue shifted as fuck. Higher frequency, actually it would not be blue at all at that speed, everything would be gamma rays. You know, it's all the same stuff. Electromagnetic radiation, that's what visible light is. Radio waves even, that's at the low end. Then comes microwaves and infrared, red, yellow, green, blue, violet, ultraviolet, and then you get to X-ray and then gamma rays up to whatever frequency you can think of. Okay, so would I see the universe age faster? Yeah. You slow down, so the rest is faster. Interesting problem, by the way. You could go there, then return, and more than 5 million years have passed on Earth. Was only 2 seconds for you. But what about relativity? I mean, Earth just could as well claim that it moved away from you at that crazy speed, right? All relative. And if so, then wouldn't Earth too have aged only 2 seconds? And you would have aged by 5 million? That thought's called the twin paradox. But that's not what happens, because you and Earth are not really in the same shoes, because you accelerated insanely. So you brought yourself into a different frame of reference. Then you returned to Earth frame at Andromeda when you braked. Then you did the same again on the way back. If instead Earth would have been the one accelerating, you'd be 5 million years older and Earth would have aged by 2 seconds. Dude, is that really how these things work? Sounds wrong to me. And if space isn't real, but just pretends to be real. I know, Eve. Would be nice if it worked like in those 3D space games, right? Get a bigger drive, fly faster, and everything stays normal. But that's not so. It all logically follows from the fact that the speed of light is absolute, which has been verified. But what has also been verified is the thing with the different time speeds. Remember GPS? Of course. Those satellites up there are in different frames of reference. Because of Earth's gravity well, get this, their time happens a bit more quickly than ours. All tested. For real? And the difference is 100% like the equations of relativity predict, and super precise clock speed is essential for the whole thing working. Oh, I almost forgot, the weirdness goes even further. What now? When you fly your super fast ship to Andromeda, you know, there will not just be time dilation, but also length contraction. I'm saying that the distance will look less far than it really is. What do you mean, look? Yeah, good point. The distance will actually be less. What? Because there is no really that you can refer to, it's all a matter of reference frame. So if the distance is less, why do I have to be fast then? Because being fast makes it less. The universe is stupid. David laughed. It's just logical, because if you experience the journey to last 1 second, it means the distance you experience will be flying, can't be equal to or greater than a light second, else you'd clearly see yourself move as fast or faster than light, which is impossible. So while you fly that fast, the whole of space will look quite pancaked, only in front and to the back. To the sides, everything stays normal. It's ridiculous that it's all relative. But it is, Eve. The length contraction is even symmetrical. To anyone standing still, your spaceship will seem to be a lot shorter. Stop it, Dave. The universe is a stupid place. Well, but there's something you'll like. The cosmic microwave background. Is that the window through which we can see into God's kitchen or something? David pondered this image for a moment, despite Everly's obvious drollness. No, see, how do I start? Since light takes a while to get around, we obviously see the past when we look out there in the universe. Sure. But the past wasn't all black and starry like things are right now. It was a hot place, too hot even for matter to materialize. The Big Bang? Yeah. where everything exploded into being from a point. Well, not a point though. Cosmologists don't know how big the universe is, but they are not ruling out, actually leaning somewhat towards, that it might be infinite. And if that's a possibility, then the universe must always have been infinite. I mean, as soon as there was space. Why? Because you don't get to from a finite size to an infinite size in a finite time, Eve. She walked quietly. Anyway, it was a fiery place in the beginning, and we know that, because we can still see it, to a degree. And that's the cosmic microwave background, really far away from us, 45 billion light years. Wow, we can see the beginning of the universe? Not really, only close to it, because at the beginning it wasn't transparent enough, so no light would have gotten around. But the CMB is a cool thing because we can see it in every direction, all around us. And like I said earlier, if you move towards something, the light frequency increases, blue shift, and vice versa. And guess what? We are moving relative to it. Not much, I mean really little by cosmic standards. It's only 370 kilometers per second. Wow, are we in a special place? Not quite. I'm saying that even though space doesn't give special preference to any speed, every reference frame is equal under the law, there is something like an objective speed, quasi. More like a consensus, the speed of the CMB all around us. They walked quietly for a minute. Then Everly said, "My father never really talks to me." David didn't know what to say. Then asked, "Isn't he a politician or something?" "No, well, he works for the Dems chapter in town. Don't know what he really does. It's super boring. At least your dad has something interesting to say." Yeah. David would have expressed enthusiasm about his old man, but assumed it could make Everly feel worse, so he changed the topic. Anyway, Eve, the speed of light. If the dude came here in a regular spaceship, he'd basically have forsaken his people, or at least a few decades of his civilization. Cause he'd have been in slow-mo for a while, and again on the way back, so that's why I thought, I mean, you could send generation ships or something like that, a small civilization on a ship with everything needed, and then take route on a suitable ball out there. But this dude, he looked like he was on an excursion or something. Everly had woken up again. Maybe there is a big ship out there, and they thought they could settle here, but we are here already. Oh shit, what if, instead of a world war, we get a war of the worlds? David was confounded once more. He said, "I just hope the thing that fell in his visor wasn't his car keys." Huh? Well, there must be a way for him to get back to his ship. Yeah, it's knowledge. He knows where it is. Yeah, maybe it's just that. But maybe it's also hidden in some way that you need his gear for. Maybe it's waiting for a signal or something, or I don't know, Eve. But we have to find it. I'm not so sure, Dave. Come on. Not everything we touch is gonna explode, okay? Dude, even if not, we are the last people to even risk that. I know, but what else is there? Leave it to the officials? Yes, David, that is exactly what I mean. We do not have to find the spaceship. But they will fight over it. Dave, we're just some guys. High school stoners. Nobody is. So what? We can do the right thing? Why should we be able to do what they can't, Dave? Because we want to. Don't you think they want to do the right thing too? That's just what I'm doubting. I mean, okay, but the other countries there will be competition. Dave, listen. No, Eve, you listen. If there was a guy in the right position, if I was a guy in the right position, I'd want to do the right thing. Maybe. Or maybe I'd look more for my career or my family or just money. Those guys exist, okay? That's corruption. That corruption's out there. I think it's even everywhere, at least a bit. Dave, no, let me speak. David, what? That's my fucking point. We are not perfect. But they at least have education, connections, teams, facilities. But checks and balances, David. That's key to our democracy. Take the governing party and the opposition. It's skepticism, David. It pops the bubbles, lets the air out. It avoids despotism. David said, "You're an idealist." No, you. You think you can save the fucking world? That's the high horse you're sitting on? If what you're saying is correct, it is. But it doesn't apply. Huh? That's what I mean, you know? What? Asked Everly. You're an idealist. What you described is true, but it does not apply. Listen. Just listen for a moment, okay? Then I'll shut the fuck up and it's your turn to talk. Sound democratic to you? Okay, so what you describe is the ideal of how it should go down. First of all, if it doesn't go down like this, shit's gonna burn, man. Because this isn't a pension reform, this is science and engineering of the future. This is the entire future of mankind, man. And second of all, it doesn't apply because as soon as this gets out, the military will be all over this, or the CIA, or whoever. It's not going to be a debate in Parliament. It's going to be off the books, classified, locked away, never happened. Swamp gas, man, weather balloon. It's going to be in the hands of a few people. They may also have checks and balances, but they are like an excerpt of the whole. No matter how balanced they get their shit, it's still lopsided. Military, secret agencies who are used to spying on their own people, those are guys who came up with terms like collateral damage and friendly fire. The Vietnam War looked too bad, so they renamed, get this, they renamed the renamed thing friendly fire, which means we're killing our own by accident, was renamed again to collateral damage. That was decades ago, man. You think those guys have changed? You want to hand them a laser sword and hope they'll give us all free electricity while they shake hands with the Russians and the Chinese? Are you done? One more thing. Let's say our government or the secret military assholes do it all perfectly right, and they won't. Okay, let's say they do it right. You think this will all stay secret? If it gets out, and it will, or at least there's a good chance, and if this gets out, the Russians are gonna wanna have a slice. And the Chinamen, and the Indians. Oh, did you know Pakistan, that absolute Islamic shithole, has nuclear weapons? Did you know that? They do. That was last year. They exploded 6 bombs in May. Fuck. Damn right. If other nations find out that our oh-so-perfect government is toying around with alien technology, I don't know what will happen, but that's playing with fire. Definitely. That's what it is when anyone but us finds out about this alien shit. Okay, maybe. But are we fit to handle it? We keep it secret. That's what matters. Oh, Everly? You know what? Huh? You idealist? What? We just did the Parliament thing with the opposition and shit. She stopped walking. So did he. See, Eve, we got this. We represent your ideals, and nobody will know. Shit, man, she said. And then she stretched and gave him a kiss on the cheek. We gotta marry, dude. Later. They continued walking, reached the field that was to become full of wheat. It stank a bit of cow dung, but the way around would just have led them past other similarly treated fields. It was a narrow asphalted path, enough for a tractor in one direction, which eventually took them to a sharp boundary, like drawn with a giant ruler, a transition from acres to housing estate, less than 4 meters in breadth. The path ended in a broad brick plaza, seamed with narrow front yards on both sides, beyond which citizens had made their relatively distinctly architected one-family dwellings. Everly said, "What will we tell our parents?" What I told the cop. That makes the most sense. Especially... Oh, I missed... There's a typo here. Screenshot. Especially if they end up talking to them. So, specifically if they end up talking to them. Yeah, we were in the park, and there was an explosion after a loud roar, which sounded really weird. Okay, and then we were on the ground. Dave, we were on the ground enjoying spring, okay? That even makes the most sense. We were both on our bellies. Where else would we both be on our bellies? Yeah, said David. And then the light. Our eyes were probably closed, and we felt the burn and walked away. Saw the hole. Yeah, Eve, I know. Should we tell them? We could, you know. We didn't tell the cops, so there's nothing we could botch. To even think of what happened to those people. Parts just gone. Stop it, Eve. We'll chew on that one long enough. They turned right at a corner house that was in the process of being built. Little more than the foundation had been completed. It smelled of cement and other building materials. Nobody was there. "Helicopter," David said. "I hear it." "It's 2 even." "Probably from the hospital?" "Maybe." In Everly's mind, she felt a little of the missing scenery that was hidden in the blackness around her too tall tree. Her mind was beginning to adapt, but she did not yet have hope to experience what would be the equivalent of a new, larger dome that would replace the old one, encompassing the tree, forming a new whole. David reached into his pocket and pulled out a small keyring that was full to a third. While his fingers worked to isolate the entrance key, Everly was still trying to spot the fading helicopters. He opened the front door and wiped his shoes. "Eve?" She turned and followed. Did like him. David could not see his mother, maybe she wasn't even home. He took Everly by the hand and moved toward the basement entrance in the hall, then let go of her. He opened the door, switched on the stair lights from the inside, and she closed the door once they were descending into his lair. It smelled warm and homely and faintly of hookah, but mostly of incense. At the bottom, he somewhat dimmed up the 4 300-watt halogen torches at the 4 corners of the thickly carpeted heart of the room, around which it left quite some space, at least towards the stair and to the left and right. The back directly touched the white wall, on which David often projected an automatic DR slideshow. Otherwise, 2 red bulbs could be employed to give a cozy vibe from underneath their white conical top open table lamp shades at the bottom of the wall. One of the black light tubes laid between them, but it was off like the red lamps. The other, also unlit, was parallel to the left edge of the carpeted area, where his 2 turntables and stereo were sleeping. It was convenient to have them with so much space on their backside, because it made it easy to sometimes fiddle with the cables. The blacklight tube was resting on the bottom of the equipment's wooden stand. Near the turntable stood a quite worn but luxurious office chair, and facing the entire carpeted area, along the right edge stood an adult-length worn couch. 2 fitting armchairs were placed slightly angled with the back towards the stairs. In the center, parallel to the couch, thus pointing at the projection wall in the entrance, stood a long, very long living room table that was quite full of stuff, 5% of which belonged in a vacuum cleaner. On other days, coming home felt like entering a tiny concert stage before the audience would flood in. Preparations were to be made. The mere exposure to the normally mostly dark room instilled giddiness. The dim space outside the carpet stage was not completely devoid of objects. There was, most notably, David's considerable bed. Their elation was routinely tainted by the faintest hint of nagging doubt whether they should really waste their time just being high. Later, of course, completely replaced by hours of knowing the answer to be absolutely, when they kept evolving the matter of lighting, music, and were rolling something worth the trip between the acres. A high that would much later be topped off by inhaling dense pillars of smoke from the glass bong that was waiting hidden between the far end of the long couch and the projection wall. So that was a bit obscure, I'm gonna read that again. The dim space outside the carpet stage was not completely devoid of objects. There was, most notably, David's considerable bed. Their elation was routinely tainted by the faintest hint of nagging doubt whether they should really waste their time up just being high. Later, of course, completely replaced by hours of knowing the answer to be absolutely, when they kept evolving the matter of lighting, music, and were rolling something worth the trip between the acres. A high that would, much later, be topped off by inhaling dense pillars of smoke from the glass bong that was waiting hidden between the far end of the long couch and the projection wall. But today was different. Everly was thinking of David's legs, and so was he. They sat down on the armchairs, she near the stereo equipment, he, noticeably carefully, near the left end of the couch. He was working his pants, to get the rather full pockets to align in a way that was reasonably useful and comfortable for sitting. She tried to make room on the table near him. Then she leaned back, looked at him, he at her. They breathed deeply due to the excursion that had just found its end, but mostly from the somewhat fearful excitement. It was mostly quiet. They heard the sound of a lawnmower ducking underneath a passing car. There was ticking, the station clock on the right wall far away from the bed, more a fetish than actually being used, therefore mostly incorrect. David slowly opened the large double patent fastener button pocket on top of his right thigh. Everly stopped breathing altogether. He carefully prevented something from falling out. Took it in his right hand, laid it on the table. It's pincers? David nodded. I'd have guessed so too. Weird looking, of course. Maybe there's something completely else. That's not English. It is now. Then he fetched the next object, still almost trying to escape the pocket by itself. It felt like a ring, or a set of concentric rings sticking together. He pulled it out. Fuck! What the... Oh my god, he couldn't see his hand. It was definitely still there. He felt the edges of the ring object, but he could see neither his hand nor the object. Neither could she. Put it down, she said, more a suggestion than panic. He navigated his arm to the table. Everly cried out. What? What? Dave, I can see your bone, your blood. He pointed his arm at himself. Dude, I can see into myself. Whoa. Put it down, she said, now panicking. He did so. As soon as his hand let go of the object, the rings and also his hand reappeared. Wow, Dave, I saw it zoom like I could see the whole inside of your hand. All the layers until it was at the fingers and then it was gone, the effect. Shit, Everly, I think I know what this is. And he stretched out both his arms. No, Dave! Relax, I'm pretty sure. She abstained from mentioning the 20 meters hole in the park, the halved bodies. Saw his hands touch the ribbed ring object, saw them disappear. There seemed to be a rainbow layer at the boundary between what could be seen and what couldn't be, like chromatic aberration, except more colorful. She saw him move around a bit, heard a metallic clink, then some more, and then his hands reappeared. She now saw several about 4 centimeter broad rings, lying disorderly with the alien pincers on that medium-sized clearing next to the stoner utensils, chips, sweets, and iced tea box forest. I think they changed size, expanded, I mean. Look, 4 of them are almost the same, 2 pairs actually. One is rather large, but when they were stuck together, they formed one solid ribbed thingy. What are they, David? He grabbed the 2 smallest metallic rings. Both his hands disappeared. David, dude, nothing happens until it happens. Just wait. He said, fumbled around, and then he separated his arms. See? Your hands are both gone, and parts of your arms. Sleeves too. Yeah, I'm not holding them, I'm wearing them. Around my wrists. Comfortable shrink wrap. Now wait. Dude, seriously, you are playing with fire, man! But he would not listen. He grabbed the pair of wider metallic things. Oh wow, I think... He began working the 2 rings over his shoes and then up his ankles. His feet were gone. As he was starting to get up from the armchair, the invisibility of his arms and feet trembled at the edges where the inside of his forearms and lower legs became accessible to light, showing blood and flesh as if his limbs were severed, and the weird colorful overlay at the boundary. Not the best of associations for Everly, but she too was now feeling the excitement. Alien technology. She watched David stand up, and as he was standing, she saw the invisibility flare upwards like a flame, dancing its boundary deeper along his limbs, always like a hint of rainbow at the borders, with a hint of rainbows. His legs were gone to the knees, his arms a bit above the elbows. Everly, would you please close your eyes? Dave? Come on. She heard him awkwardly twiddle with a bigger thing at the table leg. Then she heard a faint, soft hissing that she realized she already heard before, when David had stretched the rings to fit over his hands and shoes. Everly? Can I look? No. Open your eyes. What the fuck? What the fuck? Jackpot, baby. You're completely invisible. Ah! She could not see any sign of him. When I put the big one over my head, the fields connected. It's weird, I can now see myself again. Am I really invisible? She heard him move. Then she saw the seat of his armchair mold around his panted ass that she couldn't see. I can't see shit. You can see yourself? It was when I pulled the big one over my head. Maybe it's when I can see any. Maybe it's why I can't see anything at all. Oh, right. Eve, give me the tea. Everly just stared at the slightly moving indentation. She reached out to touch it, but her fingers collided with David's jacketed belly. Just invisible, it seems, he said. This is so awesome, I can't believe it. She quickly pulled her still reaching arm away when she heard David get up. The indentation vanished. He apparently walked a few steps. She saw how some objects were picked up and set down again. An iced tea box that wasn't empty seemed to have been found. She saw how it lifted off the table, opened up by itself, and she heard him sniff it. Then it tilted and disappeared partly, after which she heard him drink. He said, "How did it look?" "Awesome, man! There are so many things we could do with this!" "Could you describe it, Eve? The juice?" I saw no juice. The lid disappeared, you drank, that's it?" "Oh, okay." And the box levitated down to the table again. "So the part disappeared that was in my mouth. I thought you could see the tea in my gullet or something." "No." "Still, this is..." She waited. Heard him move. Apparently he tried to be quiet, but the room was better at it. He came closer. She kept looking at the distance where he had been. Suddenly she felt warmth. He was close. Felt his gauze hands at her left shoulder and the back of her blonde head. She let his tongue in, which was still sweet from the iced tea. Kissed the invisible lips, fantasized over the possibilities. Kept passively receiving his kiss, fought to not close her eyes. She had to see. Finally, he retreated. She followed, but they separated. A thread of spit reached into thin air for a split second. At its tip an iridescent point. He saw the excitement in her face, the fervent light in her eyes. "Eve," she heard the voice above her in the air. "You smell of pee." "Ah, shit, I know. It was only a little." She heard the soft hissing again, saw David's left hand appear in the air, and then how the invisibility retreated swayingly like the skin of a popped balloon in slow motion, revealing the entire left arm and part of his torso behind a weird iridescent layer. "Oh fuck, Dave, don't do that!" She closed her eyes from the clear open view of his insides, a wavering cross-section front, otherworldly in its precision and clarity, and yet lively change of depth in the torso. It looked exactly as if the torso had been cut off, open to the light for the first time in its existence, except the location and shape of the front kept wafting and flickering about, completely unnaturally contrasting the clear impression of a physically cut body, unbearable to a weak stomach. Everly did not see how the left hand removed the other invisibility bracelet and how David set them down on the table. How the invisibility kept flaring upwards in his thighs, the torso above visible up until the height of his heart, which he himself could see beating below in his flesh pocket. He didn't see how he removed the ankle bracelets and laced them down. His head's invisibility now only reached to the neck and was very calm, not flaring out. David stepped away from Everly, sealed the pocket in front of his right thigh. "You can look now." She opened her eyes and saw a headless body perform a lively dance. The arms moving like in the Bangles, walk like an Egyptian video, except pointing at the absent head every now and then. At first she was a bit horrified, because she sometimes saw into parts of the bloody boundary, but it was mostly the fresh memory of seeing horrific insides. Then she unfolded into a healthy belly laugh, to which he turned around and started shaking his ass, making her laugh more, made her test the limits of what still counted as sitting. "Don't pee yourself laughing," he called, his voice modulated by his dance, which changed the aggregate state of Everly's laugh to a mix of wheezing and giggling. He suddenly stopped the dance, grabbed one of the small bracelets from the table, and kneeled at the foot of her armchair, presented to her the invisible object with invisible hands, and said, "Everly Brown-Green, willst thou marry me?" which threw her off her rhythm, then let her fall into giggling again. "Ah, if only you get rid of that stupid-ass name!" "I take that as a yes." While she was calming herself down, he removed the collar, laid it on the table, and tried to fuse the 5 rings back together. It was surprisingly easy. Once they had been organized to a concentric whole, he only had to push them a little to make them adapt their size, glide together, and snap into a coplanar ribbed whole. He opened the pocket again, still standing, carefully reaching in, which reset Everly completely to stressed out excitement. Pulled out what looked like a Rubik's Cube, a dark grey cube, slightly shiny, which easily fit into his hand, though it wasn't small, with 9 squares on each side, which resulted from indented grid lines. It wouldn't be clear that the squares were really separate, the lines just being decoration. Would not one of the squares in the middle of one face be elevated? "What's that?" she asked, but realized that he couldn't know either. "It's probably not a Rubik's Cube." "Yeah, why would he bring it? Why would he bring one to Earth?" he said. "Maybe it is one, but you have to turn it on, so you can reset the colors when you're lazy." "Okay, that's stupid." "Right. It feels funny. As if all those are buttons, but I can't push them." "David, that's a grenade!" He quickly set the cube down and said fearfully, "You really think so?" "No, but it could be. Better safe than sorry." "Huh. You're right, but see that button sticking out at the top? You think that explodes it?" "It was in his pocket like that." He said, "Maybe it reacts to fingers, or I don't know. The cloak ring reacts. Why shouldn't it too?" Shit. He reached into the pocket again, pulled out what looked to be a black brick, but smaller than an actual clinker, thick as his pinky, reflective on every side, with rounded edges that had some indentations. He turned it in his hand. "What is that?" she asked again, feeling slightly stupid. "It's black." "What does it do?" "Turns black." He smiled and handed her the brick. She took it and turned it in her hands. He watched her for a moment and said, "We're kinda like monkeys in a tool shed." "Huh?" "Oh," and felt weird about examining the alien object in her ape hands. David reached into the pocket again, took out the last object that was in it. So he didn't see Everly's sudden fascination. She was staring at the brick with wide open eyes and gaping mouth. He closed the pocket and looked at the flashlight he was holding. A white metallic feeling tube that he could still just about close his hand around, with thumbs and fingers touching. One of its flat endings widened to what looked quite like a flashlight's reflector, except it was just a plain white surface. In its very center, David could see a circular indentation only about 3 mm in diameter. The cylinder part had a rounded rectangular cavity with what was clearly a sliding switch. "If what you think this does," he said, then realized how spellbound she was. He got closer. She noticed, but stayed on target. She was still staring at the black rectangle she was holding, horizontally in her hand. Her thumb held it from below, the other fingers, except her pinky, from above. They were all resting in those indentations David now realized were probably meant for exactly this. Everly said quietly, "Dave." The tone of her voice alarmed him, though he wouldn't be able to describe why. He got closer, tried to see over her shoulder, but the glass-like surface of the object was purely black. "David, want to know what's inside a black hole?" Is that thing from a black hole?" She did not break eye contact with the object, yet managed to make a face that made David think he was the stupidest person on earth. He was actually intimidated. What is that, Everly? It's knowledge. He did not respond, got even closer to her head, was feeling her warmth radiate, but couldn't see anything in the black glass. He saw that what he'd thought to be random movements of her fingertips seemed to actually have some kind of rhythm. There was something systematic about it. What is inside a black hole? There's nothing inside a black hole, she said instantly, every word coming at him with the weight of a boulder. Why did her voice sound like this? Was it even the sound? He was dumbfounded. He knew that hypotheses among scientists differed regarding what happened beyond the event horizon, how space behaved, or rather time, especially what the nature of the singularity was. A still surprisingly wide open mystery. He knew it from his old man, the physics professor. Now his stoner girlfriend was saying in a matter-of-factly way that there was nothing inside black holes, and instead of asking what that should even mean, let alone dismissing her amateur opinion, he understood very well what she meant, despite her ambiguous words, and he believed her. There was nothing inside black holes, not even space. Her words made that clear. Somehow. He wanted to know more, but feared that he would sound stupid or rather unworthy. He knew he was talking to a sage. He swallowed, then said, "Please explain." She sighed, was patient, yet sounded as if she'd had to climb down a mountain to even begin to make sense to him. Stopped using her fingers to browse whatever information the object held. A ray of light is an excitement of a field. When there is no ray of light, the field is still there. It's the electromagnetic field. Despite the ambiguous term, he understood that she was not talking about an actual electromagnetic field like of an electrified cable. She continued, "Like air, when there's no sound. But it's not the only field that exists, and there's a hierarchy, even space itself. It's an excitement of the time field." She was bombarding him with meanings that were somehow carried by her simple words. He thought it was because of the object she was holding, but the words she spoke, experienced by him to be a solid, so substantial, but the words she spoke, experienced by him to be so solid, so substantial in meaning, also gave him the impression that it wasn't the object, but that her mind had been changed by whatever that thing had done to her. That it was her own words that had this effect, but his own mind was not ready, so he only understood little. She continued, "The event horizon of a black hole is holographic. There's nothing beyond it. At the surface, reality becomes conceptual." "Everly? David? Please put that thing down." "Why?" "Just do it." She moved her fingers a bit more, then laid the black plate on the table. As soon as she had let go of it, her body almost fell to the side. She was struggling to hold her balance. Managed to lean back in her seat. "Whew! What do you feel?" "How do you feel?" "Bit dizzy. That was so intense. It made meanings appear. Not words, meanings. Right in my head. God, that was awesome." Even these words were impactful, especially the word meaning. When spoken by her, was like a broom sweeping through his brain, unsettling everything. It took a few seconds before his mind's form had wafted back into shape. He felt weird. Then he asked, "Are you sure you're okay? It changed you." "I know!" Still simple words, but still with that discernible weight. Not every word had this impact on him, only her knowledge drawn from the download of alien discoveries. "What do you mean? How were you changed?" How should I put this? Information are fragments of the hierarchy of truth. A pyramid or triangle, upwards pointing, is a good way to picture this hierarchy. Information are cones inside it, widening downwards. The names of sets and their content. They are blurry, somewhat arbitrary. The sharpness, absoluteness of information depends on how much the all context is considered. The all context is not yet known, but the aliens are a heck of a lot closer to it than we are. Basically, it's like this. The hierarchy of truth has a root. Everything is a consequence of this root. We have a word for it. We call it existence. The aliens assume that the universe is all that exists, and there are no other universes. It's simple to say the word existence, or to have an idea of when and how to use that word, but so far nobody has found its actual meaning. Nobody knows what existence really is. We are getting closer to that answer by filling out parts of the picture. The picture is the all context. The picture results from its root, from existence. The root is the first cause. The entire picture, the universe as it has unfolded, is the result. Like pouring a paint bucket at the top of a canvas, the running paint creates the image over time. Like the unfolding universe, it's a result of whatever the first cause was. The better we know the picture, the more we understand the whole, and thus the root that, in the sense of the set theory, effectively contains the entire picture. So we can set individual information, observations, etc. in relation to this all context. We are like drops of water falling from the end of a solid stream that came from a hose. We are trying to understand the outlet. We are light that tries to understand the aperture that originally projected it. David kept looking at her face, busy trying to understand, overwhelmed. Some of her words had impacted him. The rest was her own intellectualization of what she had learned. Most of it, anyway, was just unclear to him. Then he managed to realize, that's not an answer to my question. Isn't it? Parts of my mind's information matrix are now nailed to a much clearer version of the all context that I had so far, or that humans had so far. I realized that this will keep eating itself through my head. David wanted to understand, but he had no frame of reference, no experience in what she was talking about. He reached for the black glass. I also realized, she continued, that the impact on one's mind differs depending on how coherent one's information matrix is. Your mileage may vary. He picked up the object. I'm trying to say that some moments of the experience were really bad, but worth it. He looked up to her for a moment. Then at the flat surface of the object, he sunk his fingers into the indentations. Immediately he knew that his thumb was for zooming deeper into and out of a context, his fingers to navigate between contexts, to move around any topic or association map that was presented, and to operate occasional virtual buttons for situations that did not fit other navigational means. There was so much knowledge in there, oddly, none about the aliens themselves, but he realized that you don't take an encyclopedia of your species' history on an excursion. It's not useful. This bag of data was about the universe, apparently also about technology, so he quickly browsed what the various tools and objects did, how the white healing rod worked, and also learned about the meaning screen itself, whose purpose was simply to hold and convey gathered knowledge. Then he made a mistake. He looked for the information size of the universe. Found it. The artifact told him the size by making him know the meaning infinite. He looked up. Frowny mouth, horrified face. She took the black device from his weakening hand and laid it on the table. Saw that he was not in the room, though he seemed to be aware of her. Then she saw tears. What happened, David? He dared not speak. David, you're frightening me. Should he tell her? What would happen if he'd speak the word? Everly only saw deathly astonishment in his face. It was almost as if his eyes had grown. Not in size, but they really looked different. They had aged. David, please tell me. With a rather uncontrolled whiny tone, he said, "The universe!" She felt the weight, almost knew what he would say next, remembered herself trying to imagine space, the true distance between Earth and the Moon, which was greater than how most people picture it, the distance between Earth and Mars, how much the distances grew after that, how she had gotten better, yet not successful, at imagining the actual distance. It had felt as if she was trying to run, but the ground had fallen away from beneath her feet of her mind, between the feet of her mind. Only the will to picture it had remained. The process of doing so had crumbled. She had managed to push back this obstacle further and further, but she wasn't there yet, and that was only about the scales within the solar system. Finally, David said in that whiny tone, with tears rolling from his empty eyes, "It's infinite." Immediately, she felt that part of her mind flare up that had often tried to imagine leagues of space. Against her will, it tried to run with the meaning David had thrown at her, but fell on its face, had his nose ground to a stub from the friction of the asphalt, then had his frontal teeth knocked out. Thankfully, right after that, this entire circuitry was mostly replaced by the program statement, "But more." And then, less thankfully, it got surrounded by a loop statement without a abort condition that began to run despite her attempts to stop it. This construct kept producing a growing murmur that eventually resonated with everything in her mind that had any relationship to scale, revealed to it its mathematical position on the de facto ladder of scales, 0. Once things had been set into proportion, the program melted into just one singular meaning instead of being some kind of thought process. This meaning was now stored in her mind. She felt how it kept humming its murderous profoundness into the matrix. The door had been opened, and like all doors of the mind, it could never be closed again. Then finally, and she realized that she was drooling but couldn't help it, it was as if tiny letters appeared next to that new meaning in her head. They said, "But still more." She said, "Ugh." She forced her mouth closed because she woke up to the fact that David had been hugging her for some time. To it, "Sleep over it, that'll help. We should not touch that thing again. Too potent." He kept stroking her sunburnt back lightly. Eventually she said, "Please, David, never leave me." He held her more tightly. "As far as the future is in my hands, I won't," he said, gave her a kiss on the forehead, then retreated to the other armchair. "You know what, Eve? Huh? Wanna have your mind blown? In a good way?" He didn't wait for her to respond. Instead, he reached out to the table, palm down, and hit the Rubik's Cube. The button clicked. A light ping bell was audible for a moment. Her eyes went wide, but shock quickly became fascination. The basement was filled, almost top to bottom, almost left to right and back to front, with a three-dimensional grid of very thin white lines. They went through everything: couch, armchairs, table, Everly. It was as if the room had been stuffed with little cubes the size of the alien object on the table in the most orderly way. Math paper, except in 3 dimensions, which was partly replaced by the physical bodies of furniture and such. Everly was playing around with the omnipresent projection, waved her hand through it, thought about blowing smoke into it, but was certain that any chemical challenge would be the last thing her brain could use now. She was pleased with how the grid boosted her experience of depth perception of her outstretched arm. David picked up the cube. She noticed that the center button had retreated fully into the surface and was glowing in the same bright grey tone as the fascinating maze of cubes that filled the basement. She was convinced that pushing the button now would release it, turning off the grid. She waited for what David would do, then realized some other grid fields of the cube object were now protruding. Saw him move the cube around in the air, became aware of a green box that snapped from field to field, left to right, up, down, just like David was waving the cube, except in a much more amplified fashion. She also noticed a brighter green box, which was only expressing on the grid lines themselves, not as a solid body like the other. It moved smoothly instead of snappingly, like the transparent green box that followed it. David asked, "Are you ready?" She didn't know what to respond and just made sure that she was leaned back properly. David pushed the right button on the top surface, diagonally above the power button. "Whoa!" explained both of them simultaneously. The almost empty iced tea carton, into which the solid green box had snapped last, suddenly grew larger, to the size of the room, as far as the box proportions would reasonably allow. The entire rest of the room, including Everly and David, also grew, so they zoomed out of the picture almost instantly. With this growth, a new grid appeared, like the one before. It had faded in simultaneously with the magnification. Motherfucker! You can say that, replied David. How'd you know? The thingy. She knew what he meant. Was glad the fascinating experience didn't allow for the terror of knowing to take hold again. They saw the iced tea box magnified 100-fold. The dots of the printing process on the outside, the normally indiscernible dust particles floating around and sticking to the surface, a cross-section of the multiple layers of different materials that made the outer wall, the shiny silver surface inside, the yellow iced tea body at the bottom. Why isn't it dark in there? She asked. Wasn't dark in my torso either. Oh. David waved the cursor wand around again, selected a part of the wall at the height of the iced tea surface, zoomed in again. What the shit? She exclaimed. How deep does it go? We'd see, he said. The thickness of the multi-layer box wall now occupied several meters of the room. Emily wanted to get up to see the dotted printing, but she realized that she couldn't see what she was doing. David, can you, make it transparent? I want to move around. Just get up then. Dave? Try it. She did. As soon as she had set herself in motion to stand up, the room was back like before, with a hint of super microscope overlay. She waited and saw it faded back to replace reality. That's awesome, man. That's the shit. Yeah, he said, with built-in social experiment. Everly, again hiding the projection, walked to the left part of the room, outside the cozy stoner center, stopped and turned around, saw the texture inside individual printing press paint dots, saw huge but haggard flakes of dust, saw David sitting submerged in iced tea. Oh fuck, I forgot that one. Huh? Asked Everly. Eve, how are you feeling? Okay, until you asked. So a bit woozy then? Hit me already, whatever you're trying to do. Okay, you asked. He turned off the 3D box grid. They could now see the magnified room without artificial obstruction. Then he pushed another button. God, fuck! Everly sank down to the ground, which faded the unfathomable city, but it came back, and she levitated in the air, in which giant flakes of dust drifted, high above the table's dirty streets, between the giant iced tea towers. Saw the enormous drum of the way too full ashtray, a mountain of smoker garbage in what had to be about 5 kilometers distance. The basement was gone. They were in a different reality. She looked up. Their iced tea tower rose above another kilometer above them. The basement ceiling was visible too, in 20 kilometers distance through flaky air. My God, she said, and turned around, saw the top of her head far, very far behind the armchair, the back of a blonde giant 2 kilometers wide, raised left arm, saw the gigantic statue move in the distance. This is impossible! It's logical, Eve. Want to keep going? Wait, why is the iced tea... Always when I speak. I can see it too, Eve. From the inside is the sound vibrating the wall. It's just blurry. Cause it's fast. Wait. David played around with the cube, which she couldn't see. Try again. Now it stopped. Exactly, I froze the image. Wait. Okay. He tried a more advanced feature of the cube. After some fumbling, a red line appeared in the air, quite thick compared to what the lines of the grid had been like. He adjusted its length and turned the cube in his hands to make the line point perpendicular to the iced tea wall, then waved the cube around to move the line. Suddenly, Everly saw it stab through the skyscraper wall. Just wait. Say something, Eve. She saw the wall vibrate again, turning into a blur while he spoke. She said, do some of our words really do something now? Are we magicians? Okay, that's good. Dude, I hadn't even thought about that yet. Shit. I wonder if the brick can tell us that too. She noticed that the wall was no longer moving. Now listen up, Eve. And seconds later, they both heard Everly say, in a slightly muffled voice and with some high-frequency resonance, do some of our words really do something now? Are we magicians? She asked, still sitting in the air, in the gigantic city. Did you use the iced tea box as a microphone? Yeah, I recorded the vibration with the red line and played them back as sound. Isn't that awesome? That's alien spy shit, man! And I did not ignore the warning, thankfully. The what? The cube warning me not to do it live. Because... Feedback, Eve. It could have gotten quite loud in here. Excuse me if I'm a bit slow right now, okay? If I play back the vibrations while I record them, all I end up recording and playing back is noise terror. She thought about that for a moment, tried to imagine what exactly that might sound like, but was interrupted by the box grid reappearing. She got up. It felt good to be so empowered, throwing the gigantic city away just by that simple act. She returned to her armchair. The city reappeared. Then she saw David was moving the green selector to the inner box wall, where the ice team merged with it in a large upwards meniscus due to capillary action. The box he was trying to highlight happened to begin exactly at the box wall, but he wanted an excerpt. Everybody saw how the entire room-wide box grid was now slowly shifting about. David? They both winced. It's my mom! Turn off the thing, man! He touched the center button and immediately the basement returned. After the experience of a fantastic otherworldly outside, it felt like a prison to them. We have to hide the shit. Calm down, Eve. She doesn't come down here. Mostly. And those things aren't exactly glowing, right? With this, he laid back the cube and moved some empty iced tea boxes near the alien tools, tipped some of them over, laid as they were. Are you home? Called the woman's voice from above. Then the basement door opened. Both Everly and David jumped from their seats and started walking towards and up the stairs. Yep, that's the first chapter. That's all I have so far. And it's just, spontaneously started with this. It's kind of awkward though. It's just the first line. That's how you can write a story. Of course, there's a lot of stuff that flowed into it that I knew, that I wanted to get out, and the idea with the magnification stuff that was all new. That came during writing, and now I have basically some classic alien invasion science fiction without the invasion, but with that general flavor. Where the youth are now, and the government, and blah blah blah, that kind of stuff. And I think it's very good material, and so I think with that in mind, we can trust that what I will do to that Deus Ex thing, and there will be changes, will not be too painful. And but I want to do actual Deus Ex development planning videos. I have a series there for those who don't know. In the future. Instead, I actually recorded some stuff today that I want to put up in the next episode, where I want to have it actually edited, because I want to lay down what I've decided for so far, instead of just playing through the game like I did so far. But anyway, that's enough for this video. I hope actually someone listened to that whole story, to that chapter, because, well, it's nice to write that stuff, and it's nice to read that stuff, but it's even more nice if someone else also listens to it, right? And yeah, that's it for today. See ya!